take an interruption from Detective Roberts today and call it. The people are going to be calling witnesses out of order due to scheduling issues. You may call your next witness out of order.
Thank you. The people call Deputy Dante Hardy.
Do you solemnly state that the testimony you may give in the cause now pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Please have a seat and witness stand. And for the record, say and spell your first and last name, please.
Dante Hardy, D-O-N-T-A-E-H-A-R-D-Y.
Thank you. Proceed, please.
Thank you. Sir, can you tell us how it is that you're employed, please, if we didn't know already from your uniform?
With the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department.
And where are you assigned?
To this building, CCB.
Okay. What does that mean?
That I'm a deputy sheriff inside of the criminal courthouse, the Clara Shortridge Post Criminal Justice Center.
This building.
Yes.
And what are your duties here as a assignment to the courthouse?
I'm assigned to PM shift lockup, which is from 12 p.m. to 2000 hours, which is 8 p.m. And we oversee the care for the inmates.
Okay. So you're responsible for the security in the courthouse.
Yes, ma'am.
And I want to ask you, how many years have you been so employed by the Sheriff's Department?
17 years.
Back in 2018, June of 2018, were you working also in this building
Yes.
in the same capacity that you are now?
Yes.
Okay. And on the date of Thursday, June 28th of 2018, were you responsible at approximately 8 a.m. for escorting an inmate to the satellite cell on the ninth floor?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember the individual's name?
His name was inmate Baker.
Okay. Showing you what's been previously marked as People's 14. Do you recognize this individual here?
Yes.
And is this the inmate that you are talking about?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a standard procedure that's followed with respect to any property that the inmates bring out with them from their respective custodial facilities run by the sheriff to the court?
Yes.
And what is that?
We search out their property and their person
Why do you do that?
for the safety of ourselves and the safety of the other personnel and the inmates that are in the lockup.
Okay. And did you find anything when you searched the inmate Robert Baker on June 28th of 2018?
Yes.
And can you describe what that was, please?
It was a manila folder and a clear toothpaste container.
Inside the manila folder, what, if anything, did you find?
He had various papers in there. And also I don't recall
Okay.
everything.
All right. Your Honor, I have 3 photographs relating to this evidence, all dated June 28th of 2018. Lower left-hand corner has the numbers 1 through 3 respectively. May they be marked, please, collectively as People's 228?
Yes.
Thank you. Showing you what's been now marked is People's 28. There's a 228 and there's a 1 in the lower left corner. Do you recognize what you see here?
Yes.
And what is this?
This is one of the documents that was inside of the folder.
And in this same picture, do we also see the toothpaste tube as well as some handwritten documents?
Yes.
Bless you. Showing you people's 228, there's a 2 in the lower left corner. Do you recognize what you see here?
Yes.
And again, is this a close-up of the documents and this hand-drawn,
Yes.
I don't even know what to call it, piece of paper, and then the edge of the toothpaste tube to the right?
Yes.
Showing you people's 228, there's a 3 in the lower left corner. Does this appear to be the toothpaste tube that you recovered,
Yes.
along with the documents as we've described?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Once you recovered these items from Robert Baker's possession, what did you do with them?
I brought them out into the courtroom to Sergeant Westfall.
Who's Sergeant Westfall?
At that time, he was my supervisor.
Okay. And at that point, did you provide all of those items to the lieutenant?
I provided them to Sergeant Westfall? Yes.
Okay. And there is an envelope there in front of you that was marked yesterday as People's 227. Can you open that exterior envelope and remove what's inside and tell us if you recognize it, please?
Yes.
And how is it that you recognize People's 227?
This was the manila folder that I recovered from M.A. Baker.
And is there some writing on the exterior of that
Yes.
envelope?
Yes.
And does it have information on the exterior of the envelope that you recognize?
Yes.
And what is that?
This is our earn number.
Your what number?
This is our department's earn number. So this is how we
URN number?
Yes, ma'am.
What's a URN number, an earn number?
It's how we track our reports and our evidence.
Okay. So is that a unique number that would track the evidence in a particular case?
Yes.
Okay. And is that URN number 9-18-00363-4016-184?
It's 918-00363. Yes.
Okay. And if you could go ahead, do you need gloves?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. You could open that envelope once you got your gloves on and describe what you find inside.
There is an evidence property bag. There's white line paper with writing on it. There's a drawing and a picture of Deadpool. There's
Like
more.
a cutout picture?
Yes. There's more drawings of a female and a male, and a character with a tail.
then how many, other than the drawings, looks like there's also a drawing on the back side.
Yes.
What is that?
It appears to be a penis.
And approximately, or if you could count for us, how many pages of paper, it looks like writing, handwriting on, in pencil on both front and back?
Approximately 50.
In addition to the two-sided paper with the drawings?
Yes.
And the evidence, the plastic evidence bag, does that appear now to be empty?
There's a card inside.
Card. Is that also part of all of these papers that you turned over to your lieutenant?
No. I'm not sure what this
Is
is.
that a receipt for the toothpaste tube?
Yes.
Okay. And if that contained biological evidence, would that normally be sent, removed from the envelope and sent to your sheriff's crime lab?
Yes.
And are you also familiar with the type of paper that we see here in this 50-plus pages from the Sheriff's Department as some paper that is normally distributed
Yes.
through the canteen?
Yes.
Showing you the front. Where there appears to be a picture that's been cut out and some writing.
Yes.
Okay. And what does it say here?
Bigger, longer, and uncut. Just like one man. I'm grinning.
Grinning. And then some word M-U-A-H
Yes.
with a drawing of a woman's
Lips.
lips and colored in with a red pencil, it looks like. Yes?
Yes.
And on the back, the cutout picture, you said this is Deadpool.
Yes.
And then some more writing here on the back side.
Yes.
And then the 2-page front and back drawing that we talked about. Yes?
Yes.
And the back side.
Yes.
out. Also, on one of the pages, the handwritten pages, there appears to be some kind of a drawing at the bottom.
Yes.
I'm going to return all of these to you for replacement into the sheriff's envelope.
Lieutenant Cross.
Thank you, Your Honor. No questions.
Thank you, Deputy Hardy. You are excused. You may call the next witness.
Call Leslie Thompson.
And for the record, say and spell your first and last name, please.
My name is Leslie Thompson, LeslieThomPson.
Thank you.
Proceed, please.
Ma'am, can you tell us how it is that you're employed, please?
Yes, I'm employed as a senior criminalist for the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, and I am assigned to their crime laboratory.
And where are you assigned?
To the crime laboratory, which is a part of our Scientific Services Bureau.
I mean, what section?
Oh, excuse me, the
Sorry.
forensic biology section.
What is that the section in the sheriff's crime lab that handles DNA evidence?
That's correct.
Okay.
We handle evidence examination, DNA analysis, and we also make up our crime scene investigation unit.
Okay. And how many years have you been there?
I've been with the Sheriff's Department, it was 16 years last November, and previous to that, I was with the California Department of Justice for approximately 4 years at their Richmond DNA laboratory and their Riverside Crime Laboratory.
Tell us a little bit about your education and training, if you would, that qualifies you for your position as a senior criminalist assigned to the DNA section.
Sure. I have my degree from the University of California at Berkeley in molecular and cellular biology, which is basically biological chemistry. I also, within the Sheriff's Department, completed a 1.5-year-long training program for forensic biology, which consisted of lectures given by senior staff members. I attended courses given by the California Criminalistics Institute. Some of the course titles were DNA extraction and quantitation, STR and DNA analysis, and population genetics and statistics in DNA analysis, to mention a few. My training also included approximately 40 data analysis sets, 20 laboratory experiments, 6 laboratory examinations, 4 written examinations, and 4 oral examinations.
And do you now also teach others in various areas relating to DNA analysis and, serology or biology?
Yes, I do.
And approximately how many samples would you say you've processed using various DNA typing techniques over the years?
It's a tough question to answer. I would say I process somewhere close to about 100 cases a year in terms of DNA with the Sheriff's Department. Each case can vary on the amount of samples, from 1 sample to 40, just depending on what that case needs. So, in the tens of thousands.
Okay.
Yeah.
And have you also qualified and testified before as an expert with respect to DNA analysis and the results?
Yes, I have.
Now, is the Sheriff's Crime Lab accredited?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Are you accredited similarly as the LAPD section?
Yes, I believe so.
And do you and the LAPD Crime Lab share space in a building that's located on a particular campus?
Yes, we do.
Okay. And is that at Cal State LA?
It is.
And does the accreditation process require that your lab is audited on a regular basis?
Yes, we are audited every year, not always by our accrediting body. Some years it's by the FBI for their quality assurance standards. Some years it's an internal audit from our quality assurance section. And I believe it's every 4 or 5 years, we are re-accredited through our accrediting body, which is ANAB. And
What does that stand for?
Stands for the American National Standards Institute National Accreditation Board.
And does that accreditation also require that you undergo, along with all of the other analysts in the DNA section, proficiency testing?
Yes, it does.
And what does that entail?
A proficiency test is basically a blind test that mimics casework, and it's created by an outside company. And they send one for each of our DNA analysts or screeners. For DNA analysts, it's every 6 months. And we process that case just like we would an actual case. And then we submit the results to that agency. And it's that agency who checks our results, checks our processes, and ensures that we got the appropriate answers.
Are there also, pursuant to your accreditation, quality assurance measures and controls that are in place within the lab and also specifically within the DNA section?
For our accreditation, but also our laboratory tends to go a little bit above and beyond as well. So there are many quality assurance measures. I could go through some if you would like.
A few.
Sure. So within the laboratory space, we use disposable items to look at the evidence. So a scalpel that you would use one time and then throw away, so as not to contaminate from the scalpel tip. We use sterile swabs. Between each item of evidence, we bleach down our entire area, put up butcher paper. We wear a lab coat, mask, and gloves, and we change those gloves regularly. We examine forensic unknowns or evidence items in a separate space and a separate time from examining reference samples. And a reference sample is a sample from a known individual who may be involved or related to the case. So those are examined completely separately and processed separately to avoid even the sort of possibility of some sort of cross-contamination.
And does your lab also have, just as the LAPD side of the lab has, a computer program that automatically checks for cross-contamination by analysts, that includes analysts' DNA samples within the program?
Yes, we do. And we also have an additional program that checks not just our lab personnel to the sample, but samples to samples to ensure that, you know, everything worked appropriately, there was no contamination, and these results are accurate and acceptable and all and we can report them.
And is there also a peer review process in place?
Yes, there is.
So
with-
all of your work gets reviewed by a supervisor, the raw data that comes off the instrumentation?
Yes, it does. It actually gets reviewed twice. It gets reviewed by an analyst of equivalent training. So since I'm trained in DNA, it would be an analyst who is also trained in DNA to ensure that we followed our quality assurance written down standard operating procedures, that we performed all the lab work as expected, that we recorded everything, that we were transparent, and that they agree with our results.
Okay.
And then once that review is complete, then the entire file again is reviewed by the supervisor.
And since we've already heard about the basics of what DNA is, I want to ask you about the case specifics regarding laboratory case number under your sheriff's case number 18-036596.
May I refer to my notes, Your Honor?
Of course, as any would.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
And does that pertain to some evidence that was delivered to the lab under LASD URN number 9-18363-4016-184?
Yes, that's correct.
And what was the evidence sample that was sent to you for analysis?
I received a toothpaste tube containing an off-white substance.
Is that what we see here on the overhead projector in People's Exhibit 228?
That looks very much like the toothpaste tube I received. However, that's not the photo I took
Yes.
of my evidence item.
Your Honor, I have an additional laboratory photo of what's in 228 along with some results. If they could be added to People's 228, 2 additional pages, and in the lower left corner there's a 1 and a 2 respectively.
Very good.
Thank you. Showing you what's been marked now as People's 228 with a 1 in the lower left corner. Do you recognize what you see here?
Yes, I do.
And what is this?
This is my photograph of the toothpaste tube that I received as item 2 for this case.
Okay. And is it your pattern that you will photograph the evidence as part of your case package as we see here?
It is.
Okay.
Some items I might not, but in if it's not sort of something you would come across in your normal daily life, I will photograph it and possibly sketch it.
Okay. And with respect to this particular item, did you weigh it as you normally would in an object like this?
I did weigh it. Yes.
And what did that indicate?
This toothpaste tube weighed about 20.5 grams. It's so these are millimeter ticks, so it's really the size of a travel toothpaste tube. And that's sort of significant because, on the packaging, the toothpaste tube is labeled as weighing 17 grams. So this was sort of overfilled. It weighed more than what the manufacturer had stated it should weigh.
Okay. So the toothpaste had been removed and some other biological fluid or some other type of white, as you said, off-white fluid was inserted into the tube?
There was some other fluid inserted into the tube. Yes.
Photograph in People's 228 of the tube. stated that the item was passed to the defendant. There was no evidence that the item was passed to the defendant. Is that sufficient, Mr. Levine?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, proceed.
Thank you. What did you do with the contents of that toothpaste tube?
I performed some biological testing on that. So I began by taking some of the liquid and I used that to moisten a swab, which is basically a sterile Q-tip. And then I tested that Q-tip. I performed a presumptive test for seminal fluid. It's basically a chemical color change test. So you add certain chemicals, and if seminal fluid may be present, they will turn a purple color. So I performed that test on the swab with the liquid, and it did in fact turn purple.
Okay.
So that indicated to me that I needed to do more testing because there are some other substances that will give you a positive chemical color change test. So the idea is that if you get a negative, you know that the substance you're testing for is not present, and you can move on to something else. But if you get a positive, now that gives you the indicator to test more definitively for the substance you're looking for.
Let me ask you a question. This color change test, we've heard testimony in this case regarding blood evidence. Is it a similar chemical test to one that would be utilized by experts such as yourself to test for blood? A similar type color change test?
Yes, the exact chemistry is slightly different, but the idea is the same, is that when certain components in the fluid we want to find are present, they will create a visual change in that chemical, and that will indicate that that fluid could potentially be present in whatever the stain it is that you're testing.
So once you got that presumptive positive result for semen, what did you do at that point to confirm?
That led me to create a microscope slide from some of that liquid, stain it. So I added some of that liquid to a glass slide. I allowed it to dry. I added certain stains that would color the different cell types, and then I visually looked for sperm cells using a microscope within that liquid. And I did in fact find a large amount of sperm cells within that liquid.
Is there some type of rating system that you use based on the volume of sperm cells?
There is a grading system. It's not very defined, but if you can find a multitude of sperm cells in each area, because you aren't able to look at the entire stain in one shot, you have to move the slide around to view the entire stain. So in each viewing, if you can see a multitude of sperm cells, we would rate that as a 4+, which is the highest. And then 3+ would be a little bit less, and maybe not in every viewing. That's a 3+, and a 2+ would be less, and in some viewings, and so on as it goes down. So this particular slide rated as a 4+.
And once you looked at it under the microscope, what is the next step that you did?
So the next step is that I wanted to perform DNA analysis on the fluid with the sperm cells in order to obtain the DNA profile from that sample.
And so subsequently, did you do that so that you could proceed through to the DNA process?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Also, subsequent to that time, did you receive a reference sample for an individual by the name of Robert Baker? When we say reference sample, again, we're talking about a known sample.
Correct, and yes, I did.
And did you receive that from Randy Zepeda, who works in the DNA section of the LAPD's crime lab?
Yes, I did.
And is he someone you've known for years from your work in the lab?
Yes, he is.
Bless you.
He might have even been in one of my classes.
Okay. And what was the form of the sample that you received from Mr. Zepeda?
It was basically a sterile swab as well. It's called a Bode swab, and Bode is just the name of the company that makes these swabs.
It's a buccal swab, correct?
Correct.
And what is a buccal swab?
A buccal swab? It's simply, a buccal is a epithelial or non-sperm cell. It's called a buccal or buccal. And those line the inside of your cheeks. And so in order to collect this type of a reference sample from a swab, you would put it in your mouth and rub it on the inside of your cheeks on both sides. And in doing that, the swab would absorb cells from the inside of, from the inside of your mouth.
Now we've heard about the some of the steps in the DNA testing process. What testing kit did you employ in this case?
Our lab has Fusion 6C validated for use.
Okay. And is that the same testing kit that's utilized on the other side of the lab by the LAPD?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So you went through the same steps that they would go through, including the extraction, the quantitation, amplification, and then the analysis and detection, correct?
That's correct.
However,
Exactly. However, I don't know what types of samples that were looked at LAPD, but there's a specific type of extraction that's just for when you have a sample where you suspect there are sperm cells present. And LAPD has the same type of extraction, but I don't know if they performed, it's called a differential extraction. I don't know if they performed a differential on any of their samples. I don't know their case. But because I identified sperm cells in this sample, I did perform a differential extraction.
okay. And what does the differential extraction process do?
So ultimately what it does is it's able to separate sperm cells from non-sperm cells. So it takes this sample, and in this case, I put some of this liquid on a swab and put the swab in a very small sterile tube to begin DNA analysis. So the way the differential extraction works is I added specific chemicals that would only break open the non-sperm cells, allowing the non-sperm cell DNA to be released into solution while the sperm cells still stayed intact. So a sperm cell is a little bit different from a normal cell because it's designed specifically to travel through a hostile environment and then deliver just its DNA to an egg. So it's in it's in a capsule, and that capsule is reinforced with sulfur bonds. It's just reinforced. So it's a little bit stronger than a normal cell. And we take advantage of that. And we're able to add those chemicals that will burst open the normal cells, but leave those sperm cells intact.
Okay.
Once we do that, we're able to take the liquid that has the non-sperm cell DNA away from the sperm cells. And now we have two samples. We have a sample that consists of non-sperm cell DNA and a sample that consists of sperm cells that now we can add special chemicals to that will allow us to break the sperm cell capsule open and release its DNA. So we've created two different fractions or portions or samples from the one. And it's not exact. It's more of we're concentrating in this one sample the non-sperm cell DNA, and we're concentrating in the second sample the sperm cell DNA.
And that's the differential extraction is a standard process utilized by crime labs around the world.
Around the world.
In order to separate out if you have a sample that you suspect contains semen, sperm cells, from the epithelial or the non-sperm cell fraction, correct?
That's correct.
All
And
right.
it's used because normally when you have a swab and you're looking for the semen, it's from a part of someone's body, and usually a mucous membrane, like the inside of your mouth or the vaginal canal. And those mucous membranes produce a lot of cells throughout the day. And so those swabs would contain a lot of non-sperm cells. And so that could potentially overwhelm the sperm cell DNA profile. So we have a better chance of seeing everything that's there if we're able to separate the two and then perform DNA on each one individually.
Okay. So did you issue in this case a DNA report regarding what you did, your analysis, and the results you obtained that was dated September 15 of 2018?
Yes, I did.
And did you develop profiles, a reference profile for this individual, Robert Baker, based on the evidence you were provided by Randy Zepeda?
Yes, I did.
And did you also develop evidence profiles, DNA evidence profiles for the sperm and non-sperm fraction from the liquid contained inside of this toothpaste tube?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And did you make a comparison between the reference profile belonging to Robert Baker to the unknown evidence profiles that you developed using that differential extraction?
Yes, I did.
And tell us your results, please. Let's start with the epithelial fraction or the non-sperm cell fraction.
Absolutely. So for the sample of the semen from the toothpaste tube, the non-sperm cell fraction, I recovered a DNA profile consistent with coming from one individual. So it was a single source profile, and Robert Baker was included within that profile. I also performed some statistical analysis which will give meaning or weight to that inclusion, if I may.
Yes.
I performed what's called a likelihood ratio, and a likelihood ratio, it compares two separate or varying ideas.
Two hypotheses, basically competing hypotheses?
Two competing hypotheses, exactly. So one is that given this DNA profile we recovered from the evidence and this DNA profile from this individual, how likely is it that this profile from the individual could have made up the profile that we recovered from the unknown versus I have this DNA profile from my unknown and a DNA profile from anybody else in the world, any profile I want. How likely is it that that could have made up this DNA profile? And when you compare the two, if it's more likely that the individual you're looking at could have made this DNA profile, then your likelihood ratio is going to be larger. If it's not very likely, meaning that the genetic profile really doesn't match or it's not consistent with the deconvolution of your unknown,
The interpretation, basically, of your unknown sample.
basically, the interpretation of your unknown sample, then that would be an exclusion. And so in this case,
You said that Robert Baker was included.
that's correct. And the DNA profile is approximately 9 times 10 to the 28 times more likely if it originated from Robert Baker than if it originated from an unknown individual. So in terms of what that number means, within our laboratory at the time, any likelihood ratio greater than 1,000 is an inclusion. Any likelihood ratio between 0.001 and 1,000 is inconclusive. Anything less than 0.001 is an exclusion. That means this individual could not be the contributor of the DNA. So 1,000 is a 1 with 3 zeros, and that would give you an inclusion. This is a 9 with 28 zeros. It's a huge number. It's not even just thousands of thousands, it's millions of millions. So it's very strong probability that in fact Robert Baker was the contributor of the DNA that we found in this profile.
So once you make that determination, did you move on to the analysis of the sperm fraction of the contents of that toothpaste tube?
Yes, I did.
And what was your result?
I found from the sperm fraction of the sample of semen from the toothpaste tube a DNA profile consistent with coming from one individual, so a single source profile, and Robert Baker was included within that profile. I performed the same type of statistical analysis, and the DNA profile from the sperm fraction of the sample of semen from the toothpaste tube is approximately 9 times 10 to the 28 times more likely if it originated from Robert Baker than if it originated from an unknown individual.
So you basically got the same statistic from your likelihood ratio calculation.
Yes.
And would that be what you would expect given that you're talking about a single source sample?
Yes. And given that in looking aside at just the profiles, they were both single source, they were both male, and they both contained the same alleles.
Single source meaning came from one person as opposed to a mixed sample, like if you're talking about when you mentioned the differential extraction, if you were talking about an item that was recovered, let's say, from a sexual assault kit that might have the victim's DNA along with a perpetrator's DNA.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. I have nothing further.
That's an part.
Thank you, and I'll never look at procreation the same again this time.
Glad I could help.
We have no questions.
Thank you, ma'am. Your excuse.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Your Honor.
Chief, may I call the next witness?
You please have a seat and please stand. And for the record, say and spell your first and last name, please.
Jessica Sementilli, Gessasementilli.
Thank you.
You may proceed.
Good morning, Ms. Sementilli. I'm going to have to ask you some questions. I'm sure this is uncomfortable for you, but I'm going to try to get through the questions with you, okay?
Okay.
All right. First of all, how old are you today?
I'm 26.
Okay. And are you the daughter then of the defendant? You see your mom in court?
Yes.
And your dad was Fabio?
Yes.
And then do you have a sister?
Yes.
What's your sister's name?
Isabella,
And how old is she right now?
24.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you some questions about the day your dad was killed. And if you need any breaks, let me know, okay? Are you okay?
Yeah.
All right, let's get through this. You guys had moved to Woodland Hills from Canada like around 2010, is that right, as a family?
We moved to Tarzana first, then Woodland Hills, but yes.
And you ended up then at the 5012 Queen
Yes.
Victoria? Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I want to talk about that day. Starting in the morning, if you could just walk us through the morning. You remember that day, obviously. If you could walk us through the morning, do you remember what time you got up about?
I think I got up around 11:30, 12, and I know I went to the gym with my mom that day.
Okay. So when you got up and you went to the gym, that was around like 11:40 or so you left
Yes.
for the gym?
Yes.
I know the court reporter is going to turn around and look at me because we are talking over each other. So I'm going to ask a question. I know you're probably nervous. Just wait so that she can type my question and then she can type your answer, and I'll try not to cut you off too.
Got it.
Okay. So you woke up around 11:40 and you went to the gym. Now, when you got up, who was home?
Mom, dad, me.
And where was your sister, if you know?
School.
So at that time, was your sister in high school?
Yes.
And how old was your sister at that time?
16, 17,
Okay, and how old were you?
18.
And were you in school?
I was in community college.
Okay, so you were home with your mom and dad in the morning. Do you remember anything about the morning? Did you see your dad that morning?
Yes.
Can you just tell us what you remember?
He was sitting at the island working on his computer in the kitchen.
And then you decided to go to the gym?
Yes, with my mom.
So you guys both went to the gym. Who drove to the gym?
My mom. No, me.
All right. And what kind of car did you have?
A red Mustang.
229? Yes. Let me mark as people's 229 a photograph of a red Mustang.
All right.
Is that your car,
Yes.
Jessica?
Yes.
Okay. So you and your mom left for the gym in your car around 11:40 or so. And what gym was that?
LA Fitness.
Okay, is that a gym you'd been to before?
Yes.
Were you a member there?
Yes.
And you knew your mom to be also?
Yes.
Okay. What were you going to the gym for? Obviously, were you going there to work out?
Yes.
All right. Tell us what happened when you got to the gym.
We got to the gym. We went on the treadmills. We worked out our legs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, do you know, you did the workout then. Do you know, back then, did you know who Rob Baker was?
Yes.
Okay. Did you see him at the gym that day?
No. We saw her trainer, Matt.
And People's Sport team. Rob Baker?
Yes.
Okay. So you did a workout, and then did you leave? How long were you there?
Not even an hour.
Okay, so if you left around 12:43, you've seen video in court. Does that sound about right?
Yes.
And then what happened? You went straight home?
Yes, we went home.
Okay, tell us about when you got home, if you can walk through who was there and what happened.
When I got home, it was me, my mom, and my dad. I left with my friend Sahar to pick up kids that she was nannying because she didn't want to go alone. And then I came back, and it was just Dad.
Okay. Now, by the way, when you're at the gym, you said that you're on the treadmill and you did legs. Your mom didn't play racquetball.
No.
And you didn't play racquetball.
No, I never played.
When you got home, you saw your dad. What was your dad doing when you got home? A little around like 12:45, 1 o'clock, that time frame.
Working on the computer in the island kitchen.
He was still at the same
Yes.
place?
Yes.
And then you left again, is that what you said?
Yes.
Where did you go?
With my friend Sahar to pick up kids that she was nannying at Hale Middle School.
And do you know what time that was?
Off the top of my head, I don't remember, but it was immediately when I got back from the gym, and then I came back right after that.
All right, so when you got home, your dad was at the counter. Did you guys have lunch or anything?
Yes, he made me lunch.
Okay. And your mom had lunch with you guys?
No, she left at this point.
Okay, do you know where she went at this point?
No, she said she was going to run errands.
Now, if you got home at about, let's say you got home closer to 1, right? And then does it sound right you went to pick up the kids about 2:30?
Yeah,
Had your mom left before you left to go pick up those kids?
I don't recall.
Okay, but she went to go run an errand.
Yes.
Did you see her again that day?
No.
Okay. So she left before you ever left to
Yes.
go pick up the kids. So you went to go pick up these kids and you came back. What time did you come back?
In time to leave for babysitting at like 3:40, so.
So you were gone less than an hour?
Yes.
And when you came back, where was your dad?
At the island kitchen,
What was he doing, if you remember?
working on the computer.
Do you know anything about a power washer that day, him fixing or taking a power washer in to be repaired?
No.
Do you remember telling the detectives that in February of 2021 that he'd been trying to fix a power washer over the weekend? Does that ring a bell?
No.
Okay, that's okay. And then your dad had a Porsche, right?
Yes.
Had he just gotten that Porsche?
Yes.
Where did he keep it?
In the garage.
And where did you park?
I parked on the street.
Where did your sister park?
In the driveway.
What did your sister drive at that time?
A red Fiat.
And then what was your mom driving during that time?
Either the Fiat or Dad's old truck.
Is that the F-150?
Yes.
Okay. And by the way, when you come and go from your house, how do you exit your house?
Through the front door and through the gate, but the gate to the house is almost always open.
And which gate are you talking about?
The front gate to the house, it's almost always open. We just close it at night.
All right. And then do you also exit through the garage?
No.
One moment. Okay, so you came back then, and then when you came back, you left to go babysit. What time were you supposed to babysit?
I think at 4:30.
So you left around 3:40, you thought?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
For her to type. All right, so walk us through then. You went to go babysit. What happened then?
I went to go babysit. The mother, Deborah, left to go run errands, which is normal when I was babysitting. And she came back very soon after, maybe 30 minutes to an hour and told me to go home right away, and she wouldn't tell me why. And so I just left.
What time was that about? Do you know?
Probably 5:40.
And who was this that you were babysitting for?
Deborah Obad's child, Max.
And how did you know Deborah?
She was our neighbor when we first moved to California in Tarzana.
Was she good friends with your mom?
Yes.
Was she good friends with your dad?
Yes.
And then did you know her fairly well?
Yes.
Did you guys ever socialize with Deborah Obad? Or Obad?
Yes.
What about, was she married?
Yes.
And who was her husband?
Mike Campler.
So would you consider them good family friends?
Yes.
Now, after everything happened, and I'm talking about your mom's arrest, did you end up living with Deborah?
No.
Did you ever stay with her?
Yes.
And how long did you stay with them?
A night or two.
Okay. All right. So that night then, on January 23rd, 2017, after you're babysitting at Deborah's, you haven't been there very long, she comes back and tells you, what, you need to go home.
Yes.
Did she appear to you worried, upset?
Yes.
Okay. Did you ask her why or what's going on?
Of course.
Okay. What happened?
She wouldn't tell me. She told me to go home and they'll explain it when I get home.
So what did you do?
I went home.
How long did it take you to get home from Deborah's house?
Not even 10 minutes. She lived very close.
So shortly, would you say after 5 you arrived home?
I think so. I'm not sure.
Did you park? Where did you park?
On the street.
And walk us through then what happened when you got home. Where did you walk in?
When I pulled up to the house, I noticed all the fire trucks, and so I parked. I walked towards the house. I noticed the garage door was open, which was not normal. And I walked to the garage. All the firemen are there, and one of the firemen just said, "Your dad's dead." First thing I heard. And I walked inside. They told me not to look outside or look at the kitchen, and I didn't. I kept my head down, and I walked into our dining room, which was adjacent to the kitchen. And Mom's in shock, and Bella's not talking, and no one's telling me what's going on.
Okay. I'm sorry to go through this again. We'll try to get through this. The firemen told you that outside?
Yes.
So when you went inside then, you saw your mom and your sister. Where were they?
At the kitchen table.
Okay. And what were they doing?
Mom is inconsolable, screaming, crying. Bella's not speaking.
Okay. Now, what did you see as far as the scene?
I didn't see anything. I kept my head down, and we were in the living room, or the kitchen table, the dining room. There's nothing to see there.
Okay. Did you see some blood in the house? We won't talk about outside.
On the floor, I saw a little bit when I
Okay.
kept my head down.
Did you see any on your mom?
No.
Did you tell the police that you'd seen blood on her hands?
No.
You didn't tell the police that?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I don't think so.
Would looking at a transcript refresh your recollection on that, possibly?
Okay. Sure.
Okay. And I'm going to move on while I'm talking to you. What did you do then when you sat down?
Just asking questions to the officers what was going on. And they kept saying they have no answers for us.
Okay, so what happened next, and how long were you inside?
I'm going to be honest, I don't really remember the rest of that night at all. I remember going to the neighbor's house across the street because they told us we couldn't be in the house anymore. I don't know how long after that was when I got home. And then I remember being interviewed a million times after that at the neighbor's house.
So what neighbor's house did you go to?
Her name is Vanessa. I can't remember her husband's name.
Now, did other people arrive at the house when you were there with your mom and your sister?
Yes, I had my friend Sahar come. My sister had her boyfriend at the time come. And Mom had her friend Elise come.
One moment. So, who are those friends? Can you describe who those friends are?
My friend Sahar, I knew her from school. Isabella's boyfriend at the time, she's from school, and Elise was from the gym.
Okay. Now, you knew Elise pretty well?
Not pretty, I just knew of her because I saw her at the gym, and I did a yoga class with her once.
Okay, and at that time you really liked Elise, and it was your mom's friend?
Yes.
Okay. What happened then as far as when you went across the street, what happened?
I was interviewed by the detectives that were
Okay.
there
And what did they ask you?
to run through the day and questions about,
What had happened?
Yes,
What
yes.
you'd done that day?
yes,
Okay. Now, did you ever have any like crisis team people come and talk to
Yes.
you or anything like that?
yes,
When did that happen?
at the neighbor's house.
After that, did you ever do any counseling or any kind of therapy, anything like that to date?
I didn't, Isabella did.
Did you just choose not to?
Correct.
You didn't want to do it?
Right.
Okay. Now, before you went to your babysitting job, do you remember your mom just texting you, don't be late, and kind of going back and forth with that?
I don't remember it happening that day, but she always did that.
Texted you about your babysitting appointments?
If she knew about them, yes.
Okay, so she knew you had a babysitting appointment.
Maybe. I don't know about that day. Sometimes she knew, sometimes she didn't know.
Well, if she texted you, don't be late for babysitting, then
But I'm saying I don't know if she texted me that day.
Okay.
If she did, then she knew, but
Okay.
I don't remember.
typically it's something you told her.
Not typically. Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Okay, so, one moment. And your friend Sahar came over then when you were across the street with the neighbors?
Yes.
Now, where did you sleep that night?
At Deb's house.
That's Deborah Obad?
Deborah Obad.
Obad. All right. I want to ask you some questions then about your video surveillance system. So you had a video surveillance system in your house, right?
Yes.
And that was cameras that were hooked up around your house?
Yes.
Now, do you know if those cameras were working during the time frame of January 2017?
Yes.
They were working?
To my knowledge, yes.
So inside your house, you had a monitor that sat on the kitchen?
It was inside the garage, right outside. Once you open the door from the kitchen, on the right-hand side, there was the monitor there with the VCR for the cameras.
Okay, so I'm talking about the actual screen where you
It
could
was in the
see-
garage.
And did you have it in the kitchen at one point on the counter?
Not that I remember.
Okay. And in the garage, actually where the Porsche's parked, you had the DVR boxes there on top of that, kind of a white
Yes.
like a refrigerator or a cabinet or
Yes.
something?
And the monitor was on top of that.
When you knew that the monitor was on top of that?
Yes, that's where we went to go look for the cameras. It was never inside the kitchen that I remember. It was always inside the garage, the monitor.
Okay. I'm going to show you a photo in a minute. I'm talking about in your kitchen, there's a counter and then there's a big monitor. You don't remember that being in your kitchen?
No, I remember like maybe at one point it was, but I remember that most of the time it was in the garage.
Okay. Was that after, are you remembering that after the murder happened, it was put in the garage?
No, because it was gone at that point. So no, it was before. At some point it was in the garage. Maybe at some point it was inside the kitchen, but
Okay. Do you recall being able to view your cameras when you're in your house or your garage, wherever
Yes.
you believe it to be? You could view the camera footage from the outside around the house.
yes.
Okay. So then the day of this, as far as your DVR system, did you have access to it on your phone?
No.
Did your, do you know that you could access it from a phone?
Yes.
Did your mom have access to it on your phone, on her phone?
Both mom and dad.
And how did you know that?
Because when they came to set it up sometime in 2016, I was there, so I heard them talking about the app that it was connected to.
You heard who talking about it?
The person setting up the cameras.
And who is he talking to?
Mom and dad.
Okay. You remember your mom and dad being there?
Yes.
Okay. And he was explaining how to set up the cameras on your phone to view it on your phone?
Yes.
Okay. Did your mom then ever talk about being able to log in from her phone to view the cameras?
Sure. Yes.
Okay. So, I mean, had there been a time where she saw you on camera and commented to you that she saw you coming or leaving or something like that?
No.
Okay. She just had mentioned that she could view it.
Yes.
Okay. Now, as far as that system, after this happened, you never, to your knowledge, set up a new camera system, right? Meaning you never reinstalled them, plugged them in, got the cameras working again.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Did you ever, to your knowledge, get the cameras working again or plugged in again or whatever, a new DVR box?
No.
Now, did that make you concerned knowing what had happened in your house?
No, because the detectives said that it was a knock-knock burglar and they wouldn't do it again, so I wasn't worried.
So you weren't afraid?
No.
Okay. What about going on the back patio? You said the day of it, you didn't go out there and you didn't see your dad, right?
Correct.
Now, did it concern you at all about the back patio or going out there, anything like that?
After the fact?
Yes.
No.
You weren't concerned?
No, I felt close to my dad when I sat outside there.
Okay. Is that a place that your dad hung out a lot?
Yes, all the time.
And did he have we've talked about it, his favorite chair?
Yes.
Did he work out there a lot?
Yes.
And when did he work out there? Was it during the week or on the weekends?
If he didn't go to work for some reason, and I'd find him out there, during the day, or sometimes on the weekend. Sure, he's on his computer back there, but most of the time it was for watching TV outside.
Did he work from home sometimes?
Yes.
How often did he work from home?
Not often.
Did you know in advance when he was working from home?
Most of the time, no.
And when he worked from home, did he work on the patio then?
Or inside.
Sometimes.
Yes, depending on how hot it was.
Now, when you were there that morning, was your housekeeper there, Delia?
I know that she's there from transcripts and things I've seen, but I don't remember her because I was sleeping.
Do you typically see Delia there?
Yes.
And she comes on Mondays? Every other Monday?
I don't know.
All right. So, does she come every other week, basically?
I did not. I didn't know.
Okay. Had your dad then been home for the past every other week on Mondays?
Not that I remember.
You don't remember? Were you home those days, or do you not remember?
No, I was probably out.
I'm sorry?
I was probably out.
Okay. So as far as the alarm system, you never hooked up. What about your alarm system in your house? Do you have an alarm system?
Yes.
After this murder happened, did you start setting the alarm system?
Yes.
Okay, did you tell the detectives back in June that you didn't even know how to set it and you didn't set it anymore?
I didn't know how to set it, but the people who, like my aunt and my grandmother who came, they would set the alarm.
When they were there?
Yes.
I guess my question is, when you were there with you, your mom, and your sister, did you tell the detectives then in June of 2014 that nobody sets the alarm?
Right.
Did you kind of get to the point where you, as your immediate family, you didn't set an alarm?
Correct.
Okay, is there a reason why?
No.
Had you been setting the alarm before this murder?
No.
Didn't your dad set it at night?
Sometimes, but not all the time.
All right. Now, what about being home alone? Did you have any concern about being home alone?
I didn't.
When you say that, did your sister express concern to you?
Yes.
And what was she telling you?
That she was scared to be home alone and she didn't want to be, so to have us come home.
Okay. And at this point now, after the murder, are you and your sister close? Right now, let's say that.
Today, yes.
Were you close back then?
It was a very rocky relationship after the murder.
Why is that?
Because there was a lot of family fighting, so it was just
Okay.
hard on her, hard on me.
And she was 16 and you were 18?
Yes.
Okay, so it strained your relationship a little bit?
Yes.
All right. So she was afraid to be at home, but you felt okay?
Yes.
All right. Did you tell the detectives also back in June of 14th that if one of us is here alone, like we just don't like to be here? I mean, is that fair? You didn't really like to be home alone?
Correct.
All right.
But
And
not
then-
because I'm scared, just because I don't want to be home alone.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you tell the detectives also that we go somewhere else and we often go and sleep at Deborah's house? Did that happen?
Not often. We did not sleep at her house often. So I don't remember if I said that or not.
All right. So, but there was a degree of you didn't want to be home alone for whatever
Correct.
reason might be. I'm going to ask you some questions then about Rob Baker. Now, there was a time before the murder, back in 2016, where you saw Rob in your house, right?
Yes.
How many times before the murder had you seen Rob in your house?
That was the only time before that I saw him in the house.
Okay. And can you tell us well, first of all, was there a time when you found him in your mom's bedroom in her bed?
Yes.
What time frame are we talking about, if you remember?
I don't remember the time frame, but I think I was already graduated from high school. I was going to class or I was going to work. So that around that time.
2016?
Yes.
Okay. So in 2016, then, one day, can you explain what you remember happening, how you found him?
Yes, I went to my mother's bathroom to take mascara or something because I like to do my mascara in her bathroom. And I didn't notice anything, but when I came out, I noticed Rob in her bed.
And what time was that?
It was in the morning, so I don't know, 10, 11 a.m., maybe
Tell-
earlier.
Did you tell the police about 7 a.m.?
Maybe. Sure, if I was working, then that's 7 a.m.
Okay. Not trying to trick you, I just want to...
No, I just don't remember.
Okay. 7 a.m. you went into your mom's bedroom, right?
Yes.
And I say that because at the time, did your dad sleep in the other room?
Yes.
All right. So you went into your mom's bedroom, and what did you see?
I went to the bathroom first, and then when I left the bathroom, I saw Rob in the bed.
And you recognized him?
Yes.
How did you know what he looked like?
Because I went to LA Fitness, and I knew that he was the racquetball coach, whatever, there.
Had you seen your mom playing racquetball with him before that?
Sure, yes, amongst other people, though, too.
Who else?
Elise, Faye, but there was a whole tournament. There was a whole league there, so a bunch of people.
All right. So you recognized him as being in from the gym. And what did you do?
I didn't say anything. I just ran out of the room and I called my mom.
Okay, and what did you say to your mom?
I asked, why is Rob in the bed?
And what did she tell you?
She told me that he doesn't drink often. They had a party last night. Her friend Sheila, I think, they all came over, and he doesn't drink often. He got drunk, and so he slept it off.
Well, did she tell you that he and Sheila spent the night?
Yes.
Did you see Sheila there?
No.
Did you see Sheila there the night before?
I wasn't there the night before.
Okay. So you didn't see her. You don't know.
Correct.
All right. So this is what your mom told you.
Yes.
But that morning you didn't see Sheila. You just saw Rob.
Yes.
All right. And how did you know Sheila? From the gym?
Yes.
All right. What happened then?
My mom told me, and I had no other reason to believe otherwise, so I believed her.
All right. Did you say anything to Rob?
No.
Did he say anything to you?
No.
Did you just leave the room then?
Yes.
Did you ever see him leave?
No, I was leaving the house, so I didn't see him.
So when you left, was he, to your knowledge, alone in the house?
Yes.
Okay. And your mom was dropping off your sister at school?
Yes.
So when you left then, did she tell you not to tell your dad?
No.
Now, you said you weren't home the night before, but didn't you tell the police in February of 21st of 2017 that you heard your mom come home at about 2:30 in the morning?
At that point, I was home, but I wasn't like home for their party or whatever.
Okay. So let's back up then. That night, the night before you found Rob in your mom's bed, you were home that night earlier, or you're home at some point that night?
Yes.
Did you ever see any of your mom's friends come over that night?
No, I was in my room.
Around 2 o'clock, did you hear your mom come home?
If I said so back then yes.
Well, do you want to look, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Do you want to look at a transcript to
Sure.
refresh your memory? All right, let me get that for you.
Council, while you're doing that, let's take our morning recess.
I'm going to ask you a couple questions.
I'm going to show you Exhibit 129, which is up on the screen there. That's the monitor I was talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is your kitchen now, right?
Yes, that monitor was not always there though. It was also at one point in the garage.
Okay. What point, if you remember, in your mind, was it in the garage?
When it first was put in. And then they eventually put it there.
So at the time of this incident, it was in the kitchen?
Yes.
Okay, just clarifying that one. Just going back to a couple questions, and we'll go back. When you went to the gym with your mom that morning, Anything happened at the gym? Anybody, any injuries that you recall?
No.
Okay. Your mom leave with any kind of bloody towel or anything like that?
No.
Okay. No conversation about that at all?
No.
Now, I asked you earlier also about when you got to the scene, when you went into the scene, and I'm backing up, I know, and we'll get back to what we were talking about. When you got to the scene, when you went inside and you saw your mom and sister, and I asked you, did you see any blood on either one of them? Do you recall seeing any blood on either one of them?
Today, I do not recall that.
Okay, if I showed you a transcript, would that possibly refresh your memory on that?
Yes.
Okay, and this is the transcript from January 23rd, 2016, page 11. 2017, I'm sorry. Page 11, lines 4 through 6. Okay. You can back up if you need to, just to get reference. Just read it to yourself.
Okay.
Does that refresh your memory?
Yes.
Okay, let's start with your sister. Did you see some blood on her?
On her shoes.
Okay, and then your mom?
On her hands.
Okay, so you saw, as you testified earlier, blood within the house.
Yes.
Did it look like it had been like tracked through also with footsteps?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what I saw. It was footprints.
Footprints and then
And-
these two
yeah.
additional. All right, no problem. And then one other follow-up. When you talked about leaving the house, you said that you usually left, did you say through the front door?
Yes.
Now, did you tell the detectives in February that you usually left through the garage?
Well, before my dad had the Porsche, we would leave through the garage. Then when he got the Porsche, he wanted that door closed, so I would leave through the front door.
Okay, but during your interview in February 21 of 2017, they asked you then how you left, and you were talking about the Porsche, and at that point you said you still left through the garage.
This is of 2021?
Yes, do you
Correct.
recall that?
Yeah, we don't have the Porsche anymore, so yes, I would go out that door.
Okay.
Wait, I'm so sorry. Did you 2021?
You had an interview with, you had an interview with the detectives, no, on February 21, 2017, I said
Oh,
that on
yeah.
there.
Okay.
Okay.
That's why I got confused.
And during that time, they asked you, like, how do you normally leave the house? And you said through the garage.
Okay. I left both equally then.
Okay. Well, is it fair that you left through the garage most of the time? That's how I leave the house usually. Is that fair?
I don't remember.
Would looking at a transcript refresh your memory?
If I said it, then sure. I don't have to look at it. Thank you, though.
Would you like to just look at it?
Okay.
Okay. I'm not trying to put words. I just
No,
want
I
you to
know.
look at it.
I know. It's 8 years ago.
All right, February 21, 2017 transcript, and it's lines 12 through 20. Page 77.
Okay.
Okay. Is that fair then? At that time, you usually left through the garage?
Yes.
Okay. Now, did you also tell them that during that time when you're at the crime scene that, do you recall going and sitting in the garage?
That day?
Yes.
No.
Did you tell them that you went and sat in the garage and you saw some blood where the Porsche had been?
I don't remember.
Okay. All right, going back to the night, rewinding now, in 2016, what we were talking about before lunch, when you found Rob in your mom's bed, where was your dad during that time?
I don't know. On a business trip or working?
Okay, did you tell the police that he was on a business trip?
I don't know.
Would you like to refresh your memory of the
Sure.
transcript? All
I
right.
think you just answered on business.
Or working.
All right. And this is transcript from February 21st, 2017, page 81. And we have lines 15, sorry, line 15. All right. You can just review this highlighted part to yourself.
Okay.
Okay, so the time that you found Rob in your mom's bed, your dad was on a business trip.
Yes.
Now, did you tell anyone about what you'd seen as far as robbing in your mom's bed besides your mom?
My friends.
Okay, did you tell Deborah Obad?
I don't remember.
Obad, I'm saying it wrong.
I don't remember.
Did you tell your dad?
I don't think so.
Why not?
I don't know. I probably forgot about it.
Did your mom tell you not to tell your dad?
Not that I remember.
So as far as Rob Baker, then let's talk about what happened then after your dad was killed. Did you start seeing Rob Baker more frequently?
Yes.
And can you explain what kind of occurred after your dad was killed as far as Rob Baker being in the picture?
Yes. I went to a Denny's that was on Winnetka and Ventura with my sister and my cousin, and we asked for a table of 3, and we got sat down next to him, which I thought was a coincidence. And that same trip that my cousin was here, I got a flat tire, and my sister was in the car behind me, and we pulled into the median, and then I noticed, like, not even a minute or two later, I saw Rob's car, and Rob in his car passed by, and he made a U-turn, and then he was going to help me with my car.
Okay. And you said, I thought that was weird. So
Yeah.
you thought these things were weird with Rob.
Yes.
Now, you didn't tell the police any of this, any issue about Rob, right? You never told them any of this.
My argument.
Overruled.
I don't.
One moment. So, sorry, you never told the police any of this back then, and anything about this weirdness, Rob and Denny's and flat tire, you never told them any of that?
I-
Gets to when, Your Honor.
It's overruled on that grounds, but you're not asking a question, counsel.
Did you ever tell them anything that you're saying in court right now to the police?
I don't know. In hindsight, after the fact, it was weird, but I don't know if in the moment I said anything.
Okay, so hindsight when you talked to the defense team?
No, hindsight, like after being talked to by the detectives and stuff, I was like thinking that it's weird. I don't know if I said anything to the detectives because they might have not even asked me about it.
Okay. But you talked about Rob with the detectives.
Yes.
And in June 14th, you talked to the detectives a lot about Rob, in depth about how much you liked him, right?
Yeah, because I did like him at one point.
Okay, you called him a close family friend?
Yes.
You said you knew him really well? Right?
Yes.
Okay, you said he's been really nice to you since this happened?
Yes.
Okay. You also responded that he was a really good friend and he was your mom's racquetball coach, right?
Yes.
Did you tell him that he'd come over all the time? He'd come over for dinner and stuff?
I don't remember him coming over for dinner.
Would you like to look at a transcript to refresh your recollection? And the question actually is, did you tell the detectives that?
I don't remember.
Okay, I'll show you a transcript. And this is the June 14th, 2017 transcript, page 25. Oops, let me just review that.
Mm-hmm.
You remember your first?
Yes.
Okay. So did you just tell the detectives that you really liked him? He came over to dinner a lot?
He did not come over for dinner a lot. He did maybe come over once or twice. I remember a dinner when my dad was there, but that's the only one I can recall.
Well, we're talking about after the murder,
Yes.
okay? And that your mom played racquetball with him a lot,
Yes.
right? You told the detectives your mom had known him for over a year.
Yes.
And during that year, had you seen him only at the gym and that one time in your mom's bed?
Yes.
Okay. Did you tell the detectives that Rob comes over a lot now, meaning this is post murder, this is June 2017?
I don't remember.
Would you like to look at the transcript again?
Sure.
All right. Same date, page 27, June 14th.
Is this the right one?
Yeah. Does that refresh your memory?
I mean, yeah, I just read this one. Yeah.
Does that refresh your memory?
Yeah.
Okay. So did you tell the detectives that he came over a lot?
Yes.
Okay. So you liked him.
Yes.
And do you tell the detectives that he fixed your car for you?
Yes.
Can you explain that?
Yeah, my car broke down. I don't know what the issue was. And he said he had a good mechanic, so he took it to his mechanic.
And did he come and pick you up and take you anywhere, anything like that?
I don't remember.
Did he bring over cars to show you?
He had a cool car. I don't remember what it was, but I remember that was his car, so he just showed me because I like cars, and at that time I really liked cars.
Did he show you, did you tell the detectives that he had like 4 of them and he'd bring them over to you?
Yes.
Okay. And what were those for? What did he do?
I don't know. I don't remember.
No, I have a recording and a accompanied transcript. Do you know when you talk to the detectives that your interview, and just this portion, that your interview with the detectives was recorded?
No, I never knew any of my interviews ever were recorded.
Okay. If I may mark as People's 230, it's a short. Okay. Back to, you didn't know you're being recorded?
Right.
Okay, they didn't tell you you're being recorded.
No.
Have you listened to any of those recordings?
No.
Now, did you also tell the detectives that he comes a lot and just wants to make sure we're safe and stuff?
Yes.
The day of June 14th, you remember that day?
No.
What was that the day your mom was arrested?
Oh, then yes.
2017.
Yeah.
Okay. That day then, had your mom been on a trip before that?
I think so.
To Toronto? Or
Yes.
New York or
Yeah,
Toronto?
yeah.
When she got home then, was there something going on where Rob had her car?
Not that I recall.
Do you want to look at a transcript?
Sure.
Okay. I know it's been a long time. You haven't had a chance to review this, right?
No, I have. A few. I have.
You have reviewed it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Only once, though. I don't like reading it.
Okay, that's fine. And it's, again, June 14th, 2017, page 30. And if you can just start page 8, just to refresh your memory.
Okay. Do you want me to?
Is that, no, that's okay. I think this was the next, we went into this page. Is that enough?
Yes.
Okay. All right, that day then, did your memory refresh? Did Rob have your mom's car?
Yes.
Okay, and why did he have her car? Do you know?
I think he was taking it also to the mechanic.
Okay, so he helped you out with getting the car fixed and things of that nature?
Yes.
And then the detectives asked you for Rob's cell phone, right? Is that a yes?
Yes.
And you had his cell phone number in your phone?
I don't remember. I think I did.
You know I'm going to come back right now. Right? All right, would refreshing your memory help?
Yes, he had my number.
All right, but you don't remember what that number is?
Yeah,
Off the top of your
I
head,
don't
I'm
know
sure.
his number.
All right, if I could approach. And this is page 32, June 14th. All right. There you go. Just a second.
Okay.
All right, does that refresh your memory?
Yes.
His number that you gave the police, 213-272-1093. That's the number you have for Rob as of June 14th, 2017, correct?
Yes.
All right. Did you communicate with Rob then yourself? Like, did you text him or call him or anything of that nature?
Not really, but maybe sometimes, like, hey, I'm coming to the gym today. Can you save me this workout machine? If I texted him.
So during that time frame then, you talked about hindsight, but during this whole time frame of from when your dad, well, let's talk about back in 2016 until after your mom was arrested, you didn't have any problem with Rob Baker. You liked him.
Yes.
And you considered him a close family friend.
Yes.
Been asked and answered.
And then at some point you changed your mind.
Yes.
And that's after you met with the defense attorneys, correct?
No, that was the day my mom was arrested.
Okay, well, this is, on the day that you're arrested is the day that you're talking to the police.
But I don't know if she's arrested at that point.
Okay. You knew she was arrested the next day.
No, that later that transcript, they say that they tell me that she's arrested. I had no idea
Okay.
for an hour.
And let's go through that. So on the day of your mom's arrest, the police came over to your house, right?
Yes.
And then what did they tell you they were there for?
Just to look at the, like, take more stuff for the knock burglar thing they were telling me about. So looking through the house again and taking some of our electronics and stuff.
So did they recover then or take some of your computers?
Yes.
Not your, well, maybe yours and your
Yes.
mom's computers, phones, things of that nature?
Yes.
Or electronics? Okay, and then at some point during that interview, they ultimately ended up telling you that your mom was arrested, is that right?
Yes.
Did they also tell you Rob was arrested?
Yes.
All right. And then who came, was anyone with you then for support after this happened?
Yes. I called Deb to come over.
All right.
And then the next day my aunt and my grandmother came.
So Deborah Obad came over.
Yes.
And then your aunt, what's her name?
Anna.
And is that your mom's sister?
My mom's older sister.
And then who else came?
My grandmother.
And they flew in from
Toronto.
Toronto. Okay. And then they stayed with you.
Yes.
Now, one moment. Did you get then, so you've been interviewed now, you've been interviewed the day it happened on January 23rd, 2017, and then they interviewed you again, which you've refreshed your memory, February, remember that? Mm-hmm. Is that a yes?
Yes.
For her. And then in June, we just went through this interview, and some of it centered on Rob Baker, correct?
Yes.
But at this point, you didn't know that he'd been arrested.
Correct.
And then they told you after this interview. Is that right?
After the interview, yes.
About when you talked about Rob and how much you liked
Right after
him,
that.
you didn't know he was arrested yet.
Correct.
And then you found out he was arrested.
Correct.
And then you found out your mom was arrested.
Yes.
Is that right? And the police called you the next day. Do you remember that phone call?
No.
Would you like to look at a transcript? Just it's very short, just
Yes.
to refresh your memory. And this is the June 15th, 2017 transcript. You can just kind of look at the first couple pages.
Sorry, what page?
I just told you to look at the transcript in general because to refresh your memory, they called her the first couple. Does that refresh your memory
Yes.
then? Okay, and why did the detectives, what did they ask you the day after the murder?
Objection, that's irrelevant.
I'm sorry, not the day after the murder. The day after the arrest, on June 15th. What did they call and ask you questions about?
About what I did that day.
The day of the murder?
Yeah.
And they asked you if you or your mom played racquetball, and like you
Yes.
testified, you said no.
Yes.
Is that right? And they asked if anything unusual happened that morning, you said no.
Right.
And they also asked you if Rob was at the gym that you saw him that morning, you said no, right?
Correct.
Objection, you can ask the name.
Now, after this, you found out that your mom and Rob were both arrested. And after this phone call with the police when you interviewed them, did you ever do an interview with the police again?
I don't remember. Not that I remember.
Okay. But you did interview multiple times with the defense attorneys, right?
With their private investigator.
And some of the attorneys, right?
Correct.
Okay. So on August 29th, 2.5 months after your mother's arrest, you went to the law offices of the defense attorneys and you interviewed with their private investigator?
Yes.
And that was Adam Dawson?
Yes.
So they asked you a lot of questions?
Yes.
And then on October 15 of 2021, you went there again, right, to their office?
Yes.
And you interviewed with Mr. Levine, who's in court, and his investigator, correct?
Yes.
And they asked you questions again about those days?
Yes.
And then in January 6th of 2022, you went to the law offices again and interviewed with Mr. Levine and Mr. Babbage and their investigator, right?
Yes.
And you answered, again, questions that they asked you.
Yes.
Do you know if that interview was recorded?
No.
You don't know, or it was not?
I didn't know.
Did you ever see a transcript of that interview provided to you?
Not a transcript, but like a typed up thing.
A typed up report?
Yeah.
Did you ever hear an audio of your interview?
No.
And during, did you ever interview with them again at any other time?
I've met with Mr. Levine many times, you know, for updates on the case, to speak with Adam. But yeah.
And you said you met with him many times. Where did you meet?
At his office, or he would come to our house.
Okay, so both places?
Yeah.
And that was over the course of
8 years.
8 years you've met with him many times?
Yes.
Just to go over the case and what happened?
Yes.
And then you said Adam. Who is Adam?
Dawson.
Okay. Is that the private investigator that works for the firm?
Yes.
For Mr. Levine?
Yes.
And then each time you meet with them, do they ask you questions about the case and go back through the facts?
Yes, and you know, me asking questions about the case.
Okay. And you provide them any information you remember?
Yeah.
Do you know if any of those conversations ever were recorded?
Not to my knowledge.
And you were never provided any, other than these 3 reports, were you ever
Correct.
provided any more than 3 reports to review over all those many conversations?
No, just those 3.
Okay. One moment. One thing I meant to ask you, after all this happened, you said you stayed at Deborah Obad's for a while, or a couple days, I think you said. Then where did you live?
We went back to the house.
Okay. So you were back in the house with your sister, Isabella?
Yes.
And now, after your mom got arrested, where did you live?
At the house.
And who stayed there with you?
My aunt and my grandmother.
And that's Anna, again, your mom's
Yes.
sister?
Yes.
And how long did they stay with you?
They stayed with us on and off for like 3 years.
I mean, you're over 18, so you were fine in the house?
Yes.
Okay. At some point, you sold the house and you moved out, correct?
Correct.
Not you, but the house was sold.
Yes. Correct.
You and your sister moved out. Is that right?
Yes.
And that was in 2000, was it 17?
18.
18. And where did you move?
To the Avalon Apartments in Woodland Hills.
And was those apartments the ones owned by Deborah Obad?
She doesn't own apartments.
Did she ever rent you apartments or a place to stay?
Yes, I just moved out of that house.
Okay. So how long did you live in Deborah's rental?
I think 3 years.
All right. So do you remain good friends with Deborah Obad?
Yes.
All right. She's been a good family friend to
Yes.
you and your sister?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Tough topic, but up until your mom's arrest, tough topic, did you ever know that she was having an affair with Robert Baker?
No, not until her arrest.
When she went to Vegas, Myrtle Beach, those places, did you know that she was going with a male or a boyfriend or anything of that nature?
No.
Okay. I'm going to go through, if I may mark. A series of text messages. And it is 18 pages. I'm not going to do every single page. 18 pages. It's text messages between Jessica and the defendant.
That'd be 2:30.
Oh, 2:30. All right, I'm just going to go through a few of these. Putting on page 1. All right. First of all, let's talk about. Let me get it clear. Okay. February 8th, 2017. We're starting from the time frame. Did you text message your mom basically at the number associated here? Your mom's number 818-424-4213, and your number being 818.
Yes.
Okay, and is it fair that you had text messages spanning with your mom between June 9th of 2017 through February 8th of 2017?
Yes.
And that's the number you texted on? All right. This text up here, starting with June 8th, 2017, this is 2 weeks after this happened. Your mom's telling you under no circumstances answer the phone, or if anyone texts asking if we're okay, you say I'm asleep. Nobody. Okay, got it. I'm sorry, is this upsetting you? I'm sorry.
No.
I know. We'll go through this.
I was
I'll go
waiting
through
for the
this.
question.
I'll go through this. Okay.
Objection, Your Honor. The comments are inappropriate.
It is.
I'm sorry. I apologize. This message, was your mom telling you not to talk to people?
Not to tell anyone our business, essentially.
Okay. Anything more that she was telling you about?
No.
Did she, well, let me move on. Okay. So now as we're going through the text, page 2, and I'm not going to go through them all, but page 2, is there many times, is it fair to say during that time frame between June 9th of 2017 and February 8th of 2017, I'm sorry. February 9th of 2017 and June 9th of 2017, I keep misspeaking, that you were often texting your mom asking where she was late at night.
Yeah.
Okay. Were you concerned about your mom, or were you concerned about you?
Concerned about my mom.
All right. Was that unusual from what happened before a murder for your mom being out late at night like that?
Yes, but I believe that was how she was grieving, because I was out every night as well.
Okay. Your sister? No, right? Page 2 up on the screen. Your mom texted, if anyone calls or texts, don't say you have a friend there. Either don't answer or say you're just hanging out. Nobody's business. Let me move up a little bit. And was this along the lines of what you testified to? This is February 19th, like don't tell anyone anything?
Yes, because everyone's calling us every day, asking questions, wanting to know things.
And what kind of questions were you told not to answer?
Nothing, just what it says here.
Okay. But what were you told not to talk about or not to answer by your mom?
About what
Objection
the
asked and answered.
about like what the detectives are asking or saying and stuff, because everyone keeps bothering us when we're grieving, and so my mom's telling us not to talk to anyone.
All right. And then starting in February 20th of 2017, we're about 3 weeks or 4 weeks after your dad's murder. There's some text messages about when are you coming home, right? Mm-hmm. And your mom answered, and this is about a little bit after midnight, answers late.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
And then again the following night, and this is the back of page 2, when are you coming home? And your mom answers, you, my mother.
Yeah.
Right? And then she tells you she's at a comedy club, and you say, no, I'm a concerned daughter.
Yeah.
What were you worried about?
That's just making sure she was okay.
And then the back of page 4. Again, we moved to February 25th, a few days later. Again at night, around 11:18 at night, you asked your mom, when are you going to be home? Late, and you're asking her, and she says, yes. Be smart, close gates.
Yes.
Is it fair to say she was going out pretty often?
Yes.
Back of page 5. Again, now we move to March 4th. You're asking her again, are you going to be home late? and she's responding, you, my mother.
Yes.
Now, were you and your mom getting along at this point?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're literally joking there.
All right. And page 6, you said, I just want to know, and your mom wrote late with exclamation points. Right?
Yes.
All right. And then we went through some texts with your sister, but on March 5th, 2017, you're texting your mom again at 10:30 at night. And are you talking about Isabella being scared and mad?
Yes.
All right. How are you handling Isabella at that point?
I felt as being like the mediator between my mother and my sister.
Were they not getting along?
They were getting along, but Isabella's at that age was very sensitive, and everything we were doing she had something to say about, so I was trying to mediate between both of them. So don't worry about Bella saying that to Mom.
Well, you said that Bella was scared to be in the house.
Yeah.
Did you ever tell your mom, like, hey, stay home with her?
Yeah.
And what'd your mom say?
She'd stay home.
Okay, but she went out a lot too.
Yes.
Okay. Back of page 7. Again, now we've moved to March 18th, 2017. Are you going to be home late or like kind of late? And your mom says, don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a yes?
Yep.
So it's fair that you didn't always know where your mom was.
Correct.
And then March 30th, a few days later, again, when are you coming home? And your mom responds, why, you a cop?
Yes.
So is it fair that most of the time you didn't know where your mom was?
Correct.
All right. Then on March 31st, there's a text message again. You're asking your mom where she is. And she says, too many teenagers here. I'm asleep at Sheila's. She lives here in Woodland Hills. I'm already in my PJs, going to leave soon. What time you done? Do you know if your mom slept at Sheila's?
I don't know.
Did she come home that night? Do you remember?
No.
And then again in March or April 21.
This is cumulative.
I'll allow this.
April 21, 2017, you're asking your mom, where are you? And this is, again, 7:15 at night, and she says, Melrose, gonna have dinner, then karaoke. Is that something that you knew your mom to do, karaoke?
No.
Did she tell you she was going to karaoke a lot?
Yes, as we just saw right there.
All right, and then it follows into the next page when your mom asks you why, and you said, I'm just asking you, the police.
Yes.
Okay, and this is again March 25th, 2017. Same reasoning, you're just asking because you're worried about your mom?
Yeah. Wondering where she is.
Your Honor, that's April, not March.
April 25th, 2017. And then she says, no, I'm the mother, question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark. Were you frustrated with your mom at all for not being home?
No.
And then on May 3rd, 2017, do you remember her sending you a photo and she said belly dancing?
No. I see it here, but I don't know what
Yeah,
that
I know,
picture
it's a hard
is.
picture to see. Do you remember her being in Las Vegas, going to Las Vegas in May?
Yes.
Did she tell you about a party she went to where there was belly dancing and it was someone's birthday?
Yes, I believe so.
Do you know whose birthday it was?
No.
Did you know her to be with Rob Baker at that time?
No.
And then again, it continues back into page 15. We're in May 5th, June 3rd of 2017. It continues, are you coming home? This is around 2 in the morning. And she said, on my way,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
I know, we're going through a lot. I'm almost done. And basically, those series of texts were somewhat frequent.
Yeah.
All right. Leading up to the right before the arrest, there's a conversation that you have about your car, correct? Where's your car? This is June 9th of 2017. Is that right?
Yes.
Is this when your mom went to Toronto then and you were home?
I don't remember.
Well, she'd flown to Toronto, correct, for
Yes.
a award.
Yes.
And then she came back right before she was arrested, right?
Yes.
So when she left, her car wasn't at your house?
I guess not.
And did she tell you, is that what she's in? You asked her, does Rob have it?
Yes.
And she says, yes, it's at the shop.
Yes.
I told you, and then I'm on a flight, or I'm in flight, right?
Yes.
Okay. So is that when Rob was taking care of her car at the mechanic shop?
Yes.
Okay. 1 second.
Thank you very much. Hello, Jessica.
Hey.
Jessica, in reality, you kind of grew up with me, didn't you?
Yes.
I became your mom's attorney shortly after her arrest in 2017, right?
Yes.
And we are now in 2025.
Yes.
Okay. You've done a lot of things since then, haven't you?
Yeah.
How are you doing now?
I'm doing great now.
And what are you doing?
I have a great job. I live with my boyfriend. I have amazing friends.
Hold on a second.
It's
So you're doing a lot better than you were back in 2017 when your dad died.
yes.
Let's get one thing straight. What have I told you about testifying in court?
To tell the truth.
Have I ever told you to lie?
No.
Have I or Mr. Dawson or any of the defense team ever told you what to say?
Never.
So over those 8 years, on 3 occasions, we sat down and asked you if you could remember what happened
Yes.
regarding the murder of your father.
Yes.
Correct? And the first date was shortly after the arrest and prosecution began, right?
Correct.
And then the case started lasting far longer than anybody thought,
Correct.
with COVID in the middle.
Yes.
So after a year or two, we came back and asked you if you remembered anything differently than you stated before, or if you still remembered what was there, and you remembered some new things and other things you did not, correct?
Correct.
Did you always answer truthfully?
Yes.
Did we always show you the report that Mr. Dawson prepared and asked you if it was accurate and correct?
Yes.
And was it?
Yes.
And if it wasn't, did you tell us to change it?
Yes.
And you've testified here today to a lot of things you said happened and a lot of things you said did not happen, correct?
Correct.
Have you done your best to tell the truth about everything?
Yes.
Okay. Now, before January 23rd, 2017, before your father's murder, can you describe how your father and mother, how the marriage was?
I tell this to everyone. My mother and father were the epitome of what a loving marriage was, and what I strive to look for in a partner. And they're the best parents.
And husband and wife?
Yes.
Did you ever notice anything that caused you to believe that either one of them wasn't in love with the other one?
Never.
And how were they as parents?
They were great parents, both of them.
Specifically Monica, how was she?
Mom was an amazing parent. Dad was away a lot, so Mom was the one who was always there for us, taking us places, helping us with homework, there for us emotionally more than my dad was. I love my dad, but he was gone all the time.
Okay. Now, I take it you had no idea until June 14, 2017, that your mom was having an affair with Robert Baker. Is that
Correct.
right? Up until then, you thought he was just someone she played racquetball with and had become kind of a friend, correct?
Correct.
And in fact, he was around you a lot, you realize now.
Yes.
He showed up at a lunch one time. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Took care of your car and your mom's car a couple of times.
Yes.
Did he appear to have some knowledge about cars
Yes.
and some mechanics that he worked with?
Yes.
At that time, did you think anything suspicious about your mom's relationship with him?
No.
When she said she was going to trips to Las Vegas or Myrtle Beach, I assume she didn't say she was going with Robert Baker.
Correct.
You thought she was going with friends of hers.
Correct.
Now let's talk about interviews with the police, first of all. Between the time of your father's death and your mom's arrest, there was a period of about 4 months, correct?
Yes.
Do you recall how many times the police came out and interviewed you or your mom?
A few times. I don't know the exact number.
Right? And were there times when they called and spoke to you?
Yes.
And at any of those times, did you refuse to answer their questions?
Never.
Did you always meet with them when they said to meet with you?
Yes.
Cooperate with them when they asked you questions about that?
Yes.
Was there some concern that your mom expressed about the pace of the investigation and why they couldn't solve it?
Yes.
Can you describe that?
We all were feeling that way. It wasn't just Mom, but we were all feeling where are the answers? How?
Objection, speculation,
That's what we were all feeling. Sustained.
and objection, hearsay.
So ruled.
Let's start with you. How are you feeling
Now,
about the delay in finding out who did this?
Objection, relevance.
Sustained.
Did your mom express concern or frustration with the pace of the investigation?
yes.
Did she ever talk to you about insurance?
No.
Did she ever express to you concern about insurance?
No.
In fact, you were one of the named beneficiaries, right?
Correct.
And when did you eventually get your share of the life insurance proceeds?
After my mother was arrested,
And what did you use them for?
to pay rent and bills.
Let me bring you back to the date of your mom's arrest. Before I do that, we were talking about the relationship between your mom and dad and the relationship you all had together. Did you give us a couple of photographs portraying the type of relationship your mom and dad had?
Yes.
Can we show those, please, Your Honor?
How many are we talking about?
Your Honor,
Two.
it's 2 short videos.
Let me see your cell phone.
May I approach?
Thank you for your patience. At this time, the defense may continue.
Your Honor, I think we asked permission to show 2 videos to the witness and the jury, if we could do so.
Use that as a mark first.
Yes, that's a good idea. What's our next one?
Your next is 620. And these are via what?
CDs, Your Honor, 2 separate CDs. Mark, the first video is 620 and then the second video is 621. Your Honor.
No, both B, 620, A and B.
Understood. Thank you.
I didn't understand anything he said. Jessica, can you see this first video?
Yes.
Can you put it in context, where and when that was taken?
Yeah, we're in the kitchen. My grandmother's visiting this trip. This is December 3rd,
What year?
2016.
May we play it?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And the second video, Your Honor, may that be marked? Has that been marked already?
Sorry, Mark, sir.
May I play, Your Honor?
Could you identify first what this is, Jessica, if you know, and when it was taken?
Yeah, this is my mom and dad dancing in the kitchen, and I'm not sure if this is also December 6th or 3rd, or if this is in October.
It was 2016.
16.
May we play it?
Please.
Thank you. Jessica, was this commonplace among your dad and mom in the years leading up to his murder?
Yes.
And is this what you meant when you characterized it as a marriage you thought was perfect?
Yes.
You eventually obviously learned it was not
Correct.
on your mother's side.
Yes.
And we'll get to that. But first I want to go to this last interview of yours. You cooperated every time with the police, did you not?
Yes.
And in fact, this last interview, some of the pages of which were used to refresh your memory, took place on June 14, 2017
Correct.
at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Correct?
Correct.
And it took place where, if you know?
At my home, the Queen Victoria House.
Okay, and
the kitchen table.
present was Detective Chuck Knowles, Knolls, and a Detective Sanchez and a Detective King, along with you and Deborah Obad and Anna Larson, correct?
Anna Larson wasn't there; it was on the phone. But yes, correct.
Okay. And the purpose of this interview was what? What were you told?
And they had called. I was at school originally, and they had called me to ask me more questions about the day of the murder. And so I went home and they were already in my house, which I thought was weird. I didn't know they were at my house. And there was detectives all over the place, all over the house, and we were at the kitchen table.
Okay, but initially they did not tell you anything about your mom or Mr.
No.
Baker being arrested, did they?
No, not at all.
In fact, for the majority of this interview, which covered 98 pages, they continued to ask you questions about the murder, correct?
Correct.
Where you were, right?
Yes.
What you remember about Baker,
Yes.
about Baker and his cars,
Yes.
about going to racquetball.
Yes.
So questions as similar on the same topic that you had been questioned numerous times before by the LAPD, correct?
Yes. Correct.
And all this time, you found out they knew that your mother had been arrested.
Correct. They were lying to me.
And you even asked, as you were during the interview, what's going on? How's the investigation going? Remember that?
Yes.
And you recall one of the officers saying, yeah, it's just that they're looking for more leads. So you and your sister and your mom here, they're just looking for some more leads. The same thing they've been telling you for 4 months, correct?
Correct.
And then they continued to ask you questions, correct?
Correct.
And then do you remember how it was finally at the end of the 90 pages or so, they told you about your mother?
Yes.
How?
They just flat out said it. They said your mother is arrested, and
your response was, oh my God, oh my God.
yeah.
Okay. And following that, without going through it all, the rest had to do with where you were going to go, who was going to care for you and your sister, and all sorts of things that would obviously occur with your mom now in jail.
Correct.
So as we said, your mom was arrested and taken to court. Remember that?
Yes.
And then I was retained to represent her, correct?
Correct.
So in terms of contacting me or my office, weren't you contacting for the most part to find out what was going on with the
Yes.
case?
Yes.
When we were going to court,
Correct.
when the trial would be,
Yes.
how your mom was doing,
Correct.
all sorts of questions that had nothing to do with the facts of the case.
Correct.
Is it fair to say that the vast number of contacts during those 8 years was either how you were doing or how your mom was doing or scheduling?
Correct.
And you realize now, as the jury has found out, that the trial was continued numerous times, and we are now 8 years since the time of your mother's arrest.
Correct.
You were finally in trial. Is that right?
Yes.
During any of those times when you were interviewed about the facts of the case, did you ever lie or make something up?
Never.
And have you told the truth here today?
Yes.
Now, after the murder, And before the arrest, what was the relationship like between you and Fabio's family?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
After your dad was murdered and before your mom was arrested, what was your relationship and that of your sister and your mom with the Fabio's family?
Objection, speculation, and all this.
It's been brought out in the people's case in chief. It's overruled.
This is before the arrest, but after the death, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. The relationship was as it always had been, a normal family. They came over to California for the funerals, and when we would go there,
They supported you?
yes, yeah,
Appeared to do whatever they could to help you and your mom get along and recover. Is that correct?
correct.
By the way, can you describe what your mother's demeanor was the night of the murder when you first came home and saw her?
Yeah, when I first came home, she was in shock. She's crying, she's screaming, she has tears, she's talking nonsense. She was in a whole other state of mind. And in the ensuing days, she's sad and carrying his sweater and crying.
Did she keep his sweater on the whole night?
She kept that sweater for like weeks.
And she even wanted to sleep in their bed that night, correct?
Yeah,
But you were not allowed to do so?
correct.
What about your sister, Bella, who had discovered the body? What was she like?
She was in shock that day, and she never speaks about it.
And did this last a while, your mom's condition after the death of your father?
Yeah,
Did she ever appear to you to fully recover?
no.
Okay. Now, you had no idea that your mom and Mr. Baker were having an affair, is that correct?
Correct.
But you did know she was going out and so forth, right?
Correct.
And what was your attitude again about her going out after your father's death?
I just thought that was how she was grieving because I was doing the same thing.
You were going out as well?
Yes.
Not to show any disrespect for your father.
No.
And did Bella react differently?
Yes.
Can you tell us?
Yes, she didn't want to be home alone. But we were out, so she would get mad at us. And now when I'm older, I was very, very rude to her at that. But I was 18, and I didn't want to be home. I wanted to be with my friends, and
was she going out as well?
here and there she would, yeah. But most of the time she stayed home.
Okay, so you were shown a series of text messages today. Obviously, they accurately reflect the exchanges between you and your mom,
Yes.
and some involving Bella.
Yes.
Can you tell us what your attitude was at that time?
I was just trying to keep the peace between everybody.
Meaning you, Bella, and your mom?
Yeah.
And how were you trying to do that?
By making my sister feel heard in certain circumstances, or making my mom feel heard.
Guilty?
Huh?
Feel guilty?
No, feel heard.
Oh, okay. I mean, guilty for what going out and not being
Right.
home and so forth?
Right.
Yes. And how was Bella taking that?
She was upset.
And you were trying to be the middleman, is that right?
Correct.
Yeah, so let me interrupt this time. Take our lunch recess. We are going to interrupt the testimony of our last witness, Ms. Sementilli, so that people can call another witness out of order. You call your next witness.
Dr. Odiupo?
Please face me and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly state that the testimony you may give in the cause now pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Please have a seat and witness stand. And for the record, say and spell your first and last name, please.
Ode Okpo, first name O-D-E-Y, last name U-K-P-O.
Thank you.
Proceed, please.
Doctor, can you please tell us how it is that you're employed?
I am the Chief Medical Examiner of the County of Los Angeles.
What is a medical examiner, please?
A medical examiner is a physician who his expertise is in determining the cause and manner of death, especially in cases of suspicious violent deaths.
Okay. How many years have you been at the LA County Medical Examiner's Office, which was previously titled the LA County Coroner's Department?
I've been employed by the medical examiner's office for approaching 11 years, so 10 and a half years.
Okay. Tell us, if you would, please, about your training and education that qualifies you for your position today.
I received my medical degree from Loyola Chicago. I then went on to do a residency in pathology at the Barnes Jewish Hospital in St. Louis. I then went on to do a fellowship in forensic pathology at the Office of the Medical Investigator in Albuquerque. I am board certified in anatomical, clinical, and forensic pathology. I'm also licensed to practice medicine in California.
Can you define for us, explain to us what forensic pathology is?
Forensic pathology is a specialty in medicine where physicians determine both the cause and the manner of death. The cause of death is the event that caused everything to happen subsequently leading to their death. And then also in a medical examiner's office, the physician is tasked with determining the manner of death. And the manner of death is the circumstances where how the death happened. There are 5 different manners of death.
Okay. Approximately how many autopsies have you conducted?
Somewhere over 1,000.
Okay. And have you also testified many, many times regarding cause and manner of death?
Yes.
As an expert?
Yes.
I want to direct your attention back to January 26th of 2017. On that date, did you conduct an autopsy on a decedent by the name of Fabio Sementilli under what was coroner's case 2017-688 that is now a medical examiner case number?
That's correct.
And the age of the decedent, were you able to determine that?
The age of the decedent was part of the investigation that was provided to us, yes.
And was he 49 years old?
Yes.
And what about height and weight?
Height and weight was also taken as his body came to our office.
And what were those measurements?
I need to refer to my report to refresh my recollection on that.
Your Honor?
Of course.
I'm there and ready to answer.
Yes.
His height was 70 inches and he weighed 300 pounds.
70 inches would translate into what height?
So that is 5 foot 10 inches.
Okay. Did you prepare an autopsy report with respect to your examination, observations, as well as diagrams and notations?
Yes.
Okay. And when an autopsy is conducted, such as in this case, were photographs taken at the time?
Yes.
And have you reviewed not only your report, but also the photographs that were taken prior to, during, and after autopsy?
Yes.
Okay. And do those photos accurately depict your observations?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, I have 16 documents, including photographs and diagrams. May they be marked collectively, please, as People's 231.
Yes.
Start by showing you people's 231. There's a 5 in the lower left corner. Do you recognize what you see here?
Yes.
Does that also come up on the projector right there to your left?
The screen before me doesn't have it on.
Oh, I'm sorry. If you can, if you can just turn it on the top. That would have happened. Apparently someone shut off the... That's the monitor.
We'll stay friends.
Right.
Okay.
Top button on the left.
It's something's floating on the screen, but
Yeah.
There's nothing.
We have to slow down the screen.
oops, no, now you turn it off. See, there's a little. What's been marked as people's 231. There's a 5 in the lower left corner. Do you recognize this individual?
Yes.
And how is it that you're able to recognize and identify a particular decedent that comes into the medical examiner's department?
By the unique medical examiner identification number at the bottom of the photograph indicating the year and the unique case number, as well as my recollection of reviewing for this case prior for testimony.
And with respect to the unique case number, that is 17-00688, correct?
Yes.
And that would also be a sequential number at the medical examiner's department, correct, for that year of 2017?
Correct.
Okay. Is it the standard practice at the medical examiner's office that any time a decedent is brought in and photographed, that the unique coroner's case number, as it used to be, or now medical examiner's number will appear in the photograph on some type of a placard?
That's correct.
Once a decedent such as Mr. Sementilli is brought in to the medical examiner's office, are photographs taken prior to the time any clothing is removed and the body is washed prior to autopsy?
Yes.
Showing you people's 231, there's a 3 in the lower left corner. Once again, looking at what you see here, is this another photograph of the decedent?
Yes.
And showing you people's 231 has a 4 in the lower left corner. Once again, same question.
Yes.
Showing you equals 231. There is a 1 in the lower left corner. Do you recognize what you see here?
Yes.
And can you know what, I'm going to put a larger version of that up. Starting at the top, can you describe for us, first of all, what you see here?
This is a diagram of the human body. It's not meant to replicate the person's position, but rather anatomical standard position where I take notes on my observations that I'm finding on the body and noting them here that is before you in this diagram.
And so is this one of the standard coroner diagrams that is used at the time of observation and autopsy, onto which you would write notes simultaneously when you're observing or conducting your autopsy or soon thereafter?
Yes.
Okay. And can you tell us on this diagram, it's 20, diagram 20, but in the top left corner I see that in handwriting is written -2. Is this a diagram which contains your written notations?
Yes.
Okay. Did you want me to stop for a moment?
I don't know if I want to check out the.
can you tell us what you have drawn in on this diagram consistent with what you observed?
Yes. On this diagram, there's a portion that is the left upper chest, which is near a nipple, near the nipple, and that is where I noted a stab wound of the chest. Also on the left arm, there are superficial sharp force injuries involving the arm, including the bicep.
And I note that pointing to the wound to the chest, the left chest as you've indicated above, it says SFI. What does SFI stand for?
It stands for sharp force injury.
And as you mentioned, when I was asking you about forensic pathology, you indicated that there are 5 different causes of death. Would sharp force injury be one of those?
I was referring to manner of death for the 5. There are several ways to die for cause of death.
Okay. And below where it says SFI, I see that you have indicated some measurements as well as direction and depth, correct?
Yes.
And we'll come back to that. Showing you 231. There's a 2 in the lower left corner, and let's start. This one has 2 diagrams. Number 21, and the other one 22. Let's start with 21. Do you recognize what you see here?
Yes.
And is this once again a diagram that contains your notation and signature?
Yes.
And I see that you have indicated SFI, and I think in parentheses it says 6. Is that correct?
In the parentheses is the letter G as in George.
Okay. And once again, beneath that, does it contain some information relative to your observations regarding depth, direction, and other information in terms of measurements?
Yes, depth, direction, and also characteristics of the edge of the wounds.
And if we look at this area that I'm pointing to here, where you have drawn a line, is that the area on the interior of the right leg, just above the knee?
Yes.
Looking at the diagram next to it, 22, to the right of 21, and 231, with the 2 in the lower left corner. Again, does this appear to contain your notations as well as your signature with respect to several sharp force injuries?
Yes.
What is a sharp force injury?
Sharp force injury is an injury due to something that is sharp.
Okay. Seems fairly self-explanatory. Showing you People's 231, where there's a 6 in the lower left corner. Again, is this the same decedent that we talked about, Mr. Fabio Sementilli?
Yes.
And again, is this a photograph that was taken at the Department of Medical Examiner?
Yes.
And what is it that we see here with respect to the right side of the face, the neck area and jawline?
On the right side of the face and jawline demonstrates the sharp force injuries of the neck and also on one on the face, essentially.
And we see that same set of injuries in People's 231, there's a 7 in the lower left corner.
Yes.
And again, in 231, there is the number 8 in the lower left corner.
Yes.
Looking at People's 231, that has a 9 in the lower left corner, I see that there are placards A, B, and C. Are those indicators that you placed for reference to your description in your autopsy report?
Yes.
Okay. Let's start by looking at number A. First of all, how many sharp force injuries in total did you observe?
There were a total of 7 either incised wound or stab wound, and then there were 2 additional superficial wounds on the left arm.
What is the difference between an incised wound and a stab wound?
An incised wound is where the surface of the injury is longer than it is deep. A stab wound is deeper than it is long.
Okay. So in looking at what you have delineated as A, can you describe this particular sharp force injury to us?
Yes. This is a stab wound of the face that's near the jawline, and there are 2 areas of the wound that look separate from each other, almost forming like a Y appearance to the wound.
Okay. What was the direction of this particular sharp force injury?
This one was from his back to front, and I need to refer to my report for the additional directions. His right to left and downward.
So in a downward direction.
Correct.
So in this one you have 2 separate angles, as you mentioned. It's sort of in a Y shape. What does that indicate to you?
This indicates either the person holding the knife was moving as the knife came out in a different direction, so that's why you have 2 components, or the person being assaulted was moving as the knife was in them and it came out.
Okay. And were there, out of the 7 sharp force injuries that we're going to talk about, were 3 of those injuries consistent with being back to front?
Yes.
All right. And can you tell us what was the track or the wound track in this particular case?
This injury for the one labeled A went through essentially soft tissue, which is like muscle and fat, so no major organs or vessels were identified.
Okay. How deep was this particular injury?
I need to refer to my report for that detail. The depth was 2 inches for this one.
And I noticed in your report that you labeled this particular injury as sharp force injury 1. In terms of assigning a number, do those in any way correlate with an assumed order?
No.
So you number them for purposes of reference to your report?
That's correct.
Okay. In terms of each of the seven sharp force injuries, are all of these injuries consistent with a knife or knives that are single edged blades?
Yes.
What does that mean?
A single-edged blade will have such that one part of the stab wound has a sharp end where the knife is sharp, and the opposite end is blunt, which means that that side of the knife was not sharp. and so therefore it's consistent with a knife that is a single-edged blade.
Were any of the injuries specific to a particular area of the body, such as cartilage or bone, that would potentially preserve a tool mark or pattern?
None of the wounds have features that would suggest a tool mark pattern to be preserved.
Does that mean that if detectives, law enforcement were able to identify a potential weapon and submit it to the Department of Medical Examiner, there wouldn't be any injuries to compare a weapon to?
Correct.
Okay. When we talk about a single-edged blade, showing you what's been previously marked as People's 155, are we talking about any type of knife such as this that is smooth on one end and then sharp on the other?
Yes.
And in terms of this particular item, which has a serrated blade, as we see here, again, were there any tool marks to specific areas of the body, as I mentioned, like cartilage or bone, that would tend to preserve a potential pattern such as serration or a tool mark?
No, there are no features of the wounds where a specific tool could be matched to, other than the features of being a blunt and sharp edges is consistent with a single-edged blade.
Okay. So that's as much as you could tell with respect to the weapon, correct?
Yes.
Let's look at what you've delineated as B, or sharp force injury 2. Can you tell us about that particular injury?
Yes. This was a sharp force injury of the neck that was longer than it was deep, so it is an incised wound.
Okay. And you told us the difference between an incised wound and a stab wound. With respect to this particular injury, was there, again, both a sharp and a blunt edge?
Yes.
Okay. Again, as you said, consistent with a single-edged knife?
Yes.
Okay. And let's move on to what you've notated as injury C, sharp force injury 3. Could you describe that one for us?
The one labeled C is a sharp force injury of neck that is a stab wound, and this had a significant injury associated with it, which was the jugular vein and carotid artery were severed as a result of this stab wound.
Okay. So in this case, what was the depth of this particular wound?
I need to refer to my report briefly. The depth was 4 inches.
And what was the direction, please?
The direction went from his front to back, right to left, and downward.
If I were to ask you about this injury, is it possible that this injury, given the direction of the injury front to back, right to left, downward, the front to back portion of the injury, is that possibly consistent with being attacked maybe from behind?
I'm going to object possibly is speculation.
It's a hypothetical.
It's overruled.
It's possible.
And how would an injury such as that potentially occur?
Just to clarify, if it from behind, you mean?
Yeah.
If the person is behind, it could be a strike that's extending out, but then coming back. Even though they're behind the person, it will be on the relative to their body, because that's what we talk about in our diagrams and injuries. It's relative to the body, not the person. And so in that scenario, someone can be behind and then the direction of the stab wound is going from their front to back because they're coming from their front to their back.
Could it be potentially consistent with, again, hypothetically, someone reaching around the front of the neck area?
Yes.
You mentioned that this one perforated the jugular vein as well as the right carotid artery. Are those injuries, perforations of the jugular vein and the carotid artery, immediately life-threatening?
Yes.
And did this particular injury cause bleeding into the trachea?
Yes.
So that would mean that, did you actually observe that there was blood being aspirated into the lung?
Yes.
So in that situation, just so that we can understand that in a common sense fashion, that would mean that he would be choking on his own blood.
Essentially, that would be the way that I think most people will understand what's happening when blood is getting into the windpipe.
Okay. And given that you saw aspiration of blood into the lungs, is that an indicator that this particular decedent was likely alive for possibly an interval of several minutes, not seconds?
The fact that there was breathing enough to essentially aspirate the blood indicates that the death didn't happen instantly. There are other components of this that tell me that it is minutes possibly for the length, but not this one.
And what is that, along with this particular factor?
In addition to studying these wounds, also look at the brain. And the brain, when you lose blood, the way it responds is that it starts to swell. And it takes some time for that to happen. That doesn't happen instantly. And so that feature is consistent with a death that happened over a course of minutes because the brain was able to respond for the need of oxygen due to lack of blood.
Okay. Showing you people's 231 with a 10 in the lower left corner. I see here that you have added a notation that this is wound D, or sharp force injury number 4. Can you describe this particular injury for us?
This is a stab wound of the right side of his neck, essentially behind the ear sort of region of the neck.
Okay. And what was the direction?
And I'll refer to my report again. This one was from his back to front, left to right, and downward.
Okay. And what was the depth of this particular wound?
The depth of this wound was 3 inches.
And that is, this would be described, we're looking now at the 2 photographs on that 231 with the 10 in the lower left corner. This would be, you described in your report as a gaping wound, correct?
Yes.
Showing you 231. There's number 14. The photograph on the right, is that a close-up that you have marked as F that we see in the photograph on the left?
Yes.
Can you describe this wound for us, please?
This is a stab wound of the left chest.
And what's the direction of this particular wound?
This one went from his front to back, left to right, and downward.
And can you tell us what the wound track was in terms of what the injury was internally?
Yes, the severe injury here was a stab wound through the heart that went to the depth of the interventricular septum, which is a kind of, think of a major wall within the heart. This was associated with bleeding around the heart, in addition to a significant amount of bleeding into the left chest.
Okay. And you said this was a depth of how many inches?
This one was a depth of 4 inches.
And given that you had bleeding around the heart cavity, was there also a large amount of blood that you observed during the course of your autopsy that was collecting in the left chest and the heart cavity where the lung sits?
Yes.
As such, would this be one of those injuries that I asked you about that would be immediately life-threatening?
Yes.
And that's because this is an injury to a vital organ or heart?
Yes, the vital organ, both for bleeding, but also the heart doesn't deal well with injury. It disrupts its electrical activity that it needs to pump. So there are 2 ways that this can cause death.
And would this be characterized as an injury where there was massive blood loss?
Yes.
When you said that this injury was 4 inches in depth and pierced the organ, the heart, showing you people's 231, there's a 15 in the lower left corner. Can you tell us what we're looking at here that I'm pointing to?
Yes. This is a photograph of the heart removed from the body, specifically the front part of the heart. In the middle, there's a defect, which is the stab wound through the heart that caused the bleeding.
And that the shape of this stab wound that we see here, is that the same shape that we see exhibited in people's 231, where there is a 14 in the lower left corner that you marked as F, injury F?
I would agree that the shapes are similar.
If we look at people's 231, where there is an 11 in the lower left corner from a different vantage point, is this the same injury that I'm pointing to here?
Yes.
And just below that, what is this injury that we see on the left arm?
That is a superficial wound consistent with a sharp instrument, but it's very superficial, much like a scratch.
Okay. And looking at people's 231, where there's a 12 in the lower left corner, is that also a close-up of these 2 injuries?
Yes, this shows the stab wound of the chest and also that superficial injury in the left arm.
Okay. Looking at people's 231, there's a 13 in the lower left corner. Looking at this injury here to the left neck, can you describe that injury for us?
Yes, this is a sharp force injury of the neck once again. However, this is on the left side.
Okay. So we have the sharp force injuries both to the right side of the neck, several to the right side, as well as one here to the left side.
That's correct.
And you described this as a V-shaped stab wound.
That's correct.
How would one sustain an injury such as this, as you described earlier, with there being potential for the knife moving, the assailant moving, or the victim moving?
So when the sharp instrument first gets inserted, if it comes out at a different angle, it can create another separate wound, but they're all part of the same wound, and that's why you can see two different components. Either it's the person wielding the sharp instrument moving, or the person being assaulted is also moving, so it can be either scenario.
Okay. Or both?
Or both, a combination of both, correct.
Okay. What was the depth of this particular injury?
The depth for this injury was 3 inches.
Okay. And what was the direction?
This went from his back to front, left to right, and downward.
Left to right or right to left?
Left to right, and downward.
Thank you. Looking at People's 231, there's a 16 in the lower left corner. Photograph on the right, does that appear to be a close-up of what we see on the left?
Yes.
And did you note this as injury G?
Yes.
And can you tell us what we're looking at here?
This is his right thigh, so approximate to the right knee.
Okay. And what was the direction of this particular injury?
This injury went from his front to back, left to right, and upward.
Okay. So that's a different direction than we've seen before. The other ones we were talking about a downward direction.
That's correct. This is the one that was upward.
Okay. So could this be consistent with an assailant striking up or the victim being close to or on the ground?
Yes, there are multiple scenarios that can be consistent with this, but essentially the blade is going upward.
Okay. And what was the depth of this injury, please?
For this injury, it was 4.5 inches.
And what was the path of the wound track?
This went from his front to back, his right to left, and upward.
Right to left.
Yes, I
before you
apologize.
said left to right, I just want to make sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you. It's right to left.
Okay. And what was injured or perforated in this particular case with respect to this sharp force injury that you itemized as G or 7 to the right thigh?
There was injury to the right femoral artery and vein.
Now, again, given that we're talking about a femoral vein and artery, just like we talked about the wound to the chest cavity, would that also cause a significant loss of blood in a rapid manner here?
Yes.
So again, would this be an injury that would be immediately life-threatening?
Yes.
All right. So in total, we talked about 7, I think, sharp force injuries. I think there's the 2 superficial and then the 5 stab or incised wounds, correct?
Just to clarify, there were 7 that were either stab wounds or incised wounds, and an additional 2 that were superficial wounds, also consistent with sharp force injuries.
Okay. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Bringing the total to 9.
9. Going back to the diagram number 22 that we looked at earlier in 231 with the 2 in the lower left corner. Did you make notations on your diagram with respect to 5 of them on this particular diagram?
Yes.
And if we look at diagram 21, this is the one we just talked about to the femoral artery and vein, correct?
Correct.
And if we look at 20-2, as we talked about, this is the one to the chest, and then the two superficial wounds that we talked about to the area across from where the armpit is, and then on the left bicep, correct?
Correct.
All right. Did you observe anything on the hands, wrists area, or inner arm area that would be consistent, let's say, with a indication of a defensive wound?
I did not.
Okay. What is a defensive wound?
A defensive wound is a term in forensic pathology where the region of the body that's injured is something that would be expected when someone is trying to defend themselves from a weapon such as a sharp instrument.
So if one were to try to defend oneself or to ward off an attacker, generally the instinct is to put your hands up, correct?
Yes, to reach out the arms essentially to keep the person away, or to try to maybe even grab the implement, or whatever happens in that interaction. Sometimes there's an injury that happens as a result of that.
Given that you did not see that in this case, that there were no classic signs of defensive wounds to the hands, wrists, or arms, what would that indicate to you?
One scenario that is possible is that the person was not aware, maybe sleeping, maybe just not aware of what's happening, and that's one possible scenario. Because the expectation is to defend yourself and try to ward off somebody. So without that, it raises the possibility of that.
In other words, an individual who was taken by surprise and didn't have the time to register to try and protect themselves.
Correct, or they are somehow bound or something like that that's preventing them.
Okay. Is it also consistent perhaps with an individual who's unable to fight back because maybe they're being restrained in some manner, as you mentioned?
Yes.
Or another possibility that the person is overwhelmed by their attackers and therefore is unable to fight back. Would that also be consistent with the lack of a defensive wound, or wounds in this case?
In the event that they're overwhelmed, I can still expect to see defensive injuries. However, without that, it just raises the possibility of a surprise.
Okay. Also consistent perhaps with what we've talked about previously with respect to several of these wounds, that the person may have been initially attacked from behind, or someone with their arm coming around in front of the neck?
Your Honor, perhaps that's a speculation.
It's a pretty choice of words on the prosecutor's part, but that does not cover speculation.
Go ahead.
That's one scenario that's possible.
So what was the cause of death in this case?
Stab wounds.
Okay. Multiple stab wounds.
Just stab wounds.
Okay. But we talked about the fact that at least 3 of these injuries were immediately life-threatening.
Correct.
All right. And what was the manner of death?
Homicide.
And what does that mean in terms of a medical as opposed to a legal definition?
The medical term is that the death happened at the hands of another.
Now, is there also a protocol in place that a sample of blood is taken at or near time of autopsy as a matter of routine?
Yes.
And how is that prepared?
And the blood is drawn from the body and then placed into a container for preservation, and then sealed to maintain a chain of custody until it is submitted to the lab for further testing.
And was a toxicological screen conducted in this case?
Yes.
Is there any alcohol or indication of any common drugs of abuse detected?
None.
Okay. Typically, as in this case, is the blood that's collected also prepared on a bloodstain card that is sent to the relevant law enforcement agency for serological or DNA analysis?
Such a card is prepared in anticipation that law enforcement will come to pick it up for their evidence.
Okay. I have nothing further. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Upko, you testified before the grand jury, is that correct?
That's correct.
The testimony you gave today, was that the same in terms of accuracy as it was before the grand jury?
My recollection is that the testimony is the same, yes.
Okay. And when you testified before the grand jury, were you shown any photographs of potential weapons as you were today?
I don't recall that.
Well, if I told you in reviewing the grand jury transcript there was no reference to... Could I have the photograph, please, of 155? I believe it is. Do you recall being shown this photograph, which is Exhibit 155, a few minutes ago?
Yes.
And were you shown this photograph at the time of the grand jury?
I don't believe so.
You gave testimony today regarding the sides, how sharp the sides of the blade would be or have to be, things of that nature. You recall that?
I'm going to object, Your Honor, that misstates the evidence. He had talked about
Excuse me, you're making a speaking objection. That'll be sustained.
Did you give testimony concerning the blade and how it would have appeared in terms of length, whether it was sharp or serrated? You recall that testimony here today?
Objection, Your Honor. The compound.
Sustained.
Part of it is true and part of it is not.
Dr. Upko, did you meet with either of the prosecutors before your testimony today?
Yes.
And which prosecutor? Or both?
I met with Beth Silverman.
And when did you meet with her?
I met with her today, and I've also met with her, I don't recall which day, but also over the telephone.
Okay. And did she show you the exhibit that has been marked People's 155?
Is this before me, Exhibit 155?
The one that's on your screen, yes.
No.
Have you ever seen that weapon before, that knife?
I have not.
But she asked you a question about that knife during your testimony. Is that correct?
I object. It's been asked and answered.
No, it has not. Overruled.
Yes.
And you gave some testimony concerning a serrated edge. Do you recall that?
Yes.
The knife that was used to kill Fabio Sementilli, according to your autopsy of his body, did that... Well, Let me withdraw that. Your Honor, I have a document that is labeled Victim Sementilli Autopsy Exam amended.
Is this an autopsy report?
This is an autopsy report, and
Very good.
the number, Sementilli number, base number is 000332. And I approach,
You used to have that marked?
yes,
621.
thank you. Dr. Uko, do you recognize Defense Exhibit 21, did you say? 621.
I don't recognize this document.
Did you prepare it?
The preparation is not consistent with how I would put together documents, and it doesn't look familiar to me.
Do you see the name, third line down from the top? It says Dr. Uko. Is that your name?
Yes.
Your Honor, can you approach?
All right, continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Uko, I think I misstated something that I was showing you, Exhibit 621. You've never seen that before, is that correct?
That's correct.
Before right now.
Before right now, that's
So
correct.
this is not an amendment to your autopsy report.
No, it is not.
In fact, you don't even really know what it is except what is written on it.
Yeah, the style just doesn't look like an official document, more like an email, maybe, if I were to speculate.
Okay. When you are was there only one autopsy conducted in this case?
Yes.
And by you?
Yes.
When you conduct autopsies, and let me just limit it to this case, was there a detective or anyone from law enforcement present during the autopsy, as I understand sometimes occurs in autopsies? Is that right?
Yes.
So it sometimes occurs, correct?
With certain cases, yes.
And just so the jury is educated, and I am too, for what reason would a detective be present during an autopsy?
Objection calls for speculation.
I'm going to allow witness to answer, you know, you can answer, doctor.
The medical examiner's office, the goal is to prevent premature deaths, and so we often cooperate with agencies that are put in the position to help prevent premature deaths. And in this circumstance, a law enforcement person is investigating the death, and so it is common when there's a homicide that they attend just to get information from me regarding my findings.
And information regarding your findings in the case that you were doing an autopsy on, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So I take it you've had detectives or law enforcement at previous autopsies you conducted?
Yes.
And in those autopsies, and I'm trying to get your protocol or procedure, do they ever take notes, to your knowledge, regarding the autopsy?
I often see the detectives taking notes. That's correct.
And when they take these notes, are they required, regarding your rules and regulations, to show you any reports they have prepared as a result of those notes?
Their notes are not needed for my portion of the examination, so I don't request the subsequent report that they generate.
Okay. Are you aware or not that they do take notes and prepare reports?
Yes.
Are you not concerned at all that the conclusions in those reports, if there are any, are accurate?
Objection. Irrelevant.
It's argumentative. Just stand on that ground.
Is it your policy to review those notes to determine if the reports to determine if they're accurate?
Objection asked and answered.
No, we have our own independent process, so it don't require me to review their notes.
Well, let me get to this case that's before the jury and the court. Was there a detective or anyone from law enforcement, to your knowledge, present during the autopsy of Fabio Sementilli?
Yes.
Do you recall who that was?
Yes.
And who was that?
Detective Fillmore with the LAPD.
And do you know who Detective Fillmore is other than his name?
I'm unclear what is meant by who he is other than his name.
All right, that's a poor question. Do you know if he was involved in the investigation of the death of Fabio Sementilli?
It's my expectation, yes.
Okay, did you
Sustain.
Did you
Stricken.
Did you specifically ask him why he was there?
I did not.
Do you recall whether or not he remained throughout the autopsy?
It is common practice that the detective remains for the duration of the autopsy. There are some circumstances where they leave maybe earlier, but I don't recall specifically for this case.
So you don't have any independent recollection whether Detective Fillmore Plourde, Plourde, stayed for the entire autopsy?
For the entire being all the way up to the point that I was done and leaving the autopsy, no, I don't.
Okay. During the course of how long did the autopsy take, if you recall, approximately?
I don't recall for this specific case. I may have that in my report here. I can derive it from my report, but otherwise I don't recall.
Would you mind, if it's in your report, finding it and letting us know?
I'll look at timestamps to see if I can do that.
Okay. You don't have the time to do it now, is that what you're saying?
No, I will look at timestamps to see if I can
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
do that now.
Okay, thank you. I didn't know if you said this evening.
I don't have the specific timestamps. However, a case like this would take me on the order of somewhere between an hour and a half approximately.
Okay. And do you take notes during the course of the autopsy?
Yes.
Do you keep those notes?
The notes are maintained in my the diagrams and then also my report.
So there's nothing independent you have, independent notes, other than what is in your official autopsy report, which includes diagrams?
That's correct.
At the conclusion of the autopsy, did Detective Fillmore Plourde ask you any questions?
The name I have is Fillmore in the record.
Okay.
I don't have the other name you mentioned.
I'll just call him Detective Fillmore, and you can assume I'm talking about the same person who was present at your autopsy.
Thank you. Can you repeat the question then?
Yes. Did he ask you any questions either during or at the conclusion of the autopsy as to your findings?
Yes.
And do you recall whether or not it was during the autopsy or after it had concluded?
It's the usual is during the course of the autopsy, as things are being discovered, they're being shared.
So it's safe to say you don't have an independent recollection of this particular autopsy as to what you may have said or not said to Detective Fillmore?
Not specifically.
Okay. But the policy would be that during the course of the autopsy, well, let me find out. Is it that you orally state what you're finding as you write it down, or do you respond to questions of Detective Fillmore, or both?
In my interactions in this case is to share information about my findings. Questions posed to the detective is not part of the standard routine. I can't even remember a case where I had questions actually for the detective.
So, at least policy-wise, whatever Detective Fillmore may have prepared, and I take it you have not seen the report that has his name on it that I showed you, Exhibit 621, correct?
No, I don't have that report.
Okay. So what you're saying is what the standard procedure is, you will orally state your findings and he takes notes, and then when he's done, you have no idea what he wrote or did not write in his report, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So let me go through this and ask you if you made these statements to Detective Fillmore. Did you tell him that the victim...
It's overruled.
Did you tell Detective Fillmore that the victim, Fabio Sementilli, sustained 7 total stab wounds in 4 different locations of the body?
That would be consistent with what's in my report, so I think that would be consistent.
Okay, what I'll be asking you is that an accurate statement?
So there are, speaking of 4 segments of the body, I would have to interpret what parts of the body that equaled 4 in this circumstance. There's the right side of the neck, the left side of the neck, the chest, and then the leg. And in that sense, I would agree that there are 4 parts of the body that were stabbed.
Okay. And now, parts is different than wounds. Isn't that correct?
Yeah. Parts would be the region of the body which is distinct from a wound, yes.
A wound would be each individual, in the case of a knife, stab wound, correct?
Yes, there would be, wounds would be separate, yes.
How many total stab wounds did you find in the body of Fabio Sementilli?
So there were stab wounds of the...
Can you just give us the total? I'm sorry. Or do you need to count them up as you're doing this?
I think that I can do it one of 2 ways.
Either way you want,
can
I'm sorry.
have me look at, I can look at the report and give you the exact number.
Whatever you prefer.
Okay.
Which I take it is to review the report.
Correct.
Okay.
Of the 7 wounds that were described, 1 was described as an incised wound, and then the other 6 were stab wounds.
So is it an accurate statement that in total the victim sustained 7 total stab wounds?
No.
The correct response or answer is 6, and then 1, what was the last one you labeled?
Incised wound.
And what's the difference between an incised wound and a stab wound?
An incised wound is where the wound is longer than it is deep.
So like if I were to cut my arm this way just superficially, it could be 8 inches long, but it would not be very deep. You know what I'm describing?
I believe so.
Okay, and your answer is?
If it's superficial, then that would be an incised wound because it's not very deep and it's just longer than it is deep.
And how deep approximately would it have to be before you would describe it as a stab wound?
That would be, in that circumstance of 8 inches, then it would be anywhere above 8 inches, then it would be qualified as a stab wound.
You mean 8 inches in length?
In depth.
In depth?
Yes.
Were any of these wounds in this case 8 inches deep?
No.
Well, then I'm a little confused.
I could perhaps clarify.
Please.
It's relative to the wound as it's seen from the outside. If it's a stab wound, it goes deeper than it is long. So it's always relative to the wound, how it appears from the outside is what defines it as a stab wound or an incised wound.
Okay, thank you. I feel educated and a little stupid, but thank you very much. So, the statement that there were 4 stab wounds approximately 4.5 inches deep, I'm sorry, the statement there were 7 total stab wounds in 4 different locations is an accurate statement?
Again, been asked and answered, misstates the evidence.
So rule.
Incorrect.
Okay. Correct answer is the 6th, and what you said the 7th was, correct?
6 stab wounds, and then 1 would be qualified as an incised wound.
And the statement in 4 different locations of the body, is that a description you used during the course of the autopsy?
That's not my common practice to use that sort of description.
All right. Is that an accurate statement?
If I were to describe how many parts of the body were involved, I would also include the arm that had those superficial wounds, so then therefore 5 regions of the body.
So you're confident that whatever you said that day aloud, if you did, to Detective Fillmore or in his presence, would have been 5 different locations if you were describing the locations of the wounds, correct?
If I was asked that question at the time, my answer would have been 5.
Or if you just said it out loud.
I'm going to object. Calls for speculation unless it has to be.
That would be true, and the doctor said that's not his type of language, counsel.
Okay. Dr. Ubko, when a detective is present during the autopsy, are you verbally describing what you find to assist him in his notes, as opposed to if no one is present and then you'd just be talking to yourself?
So yes, the information is provided to the detective, whether they're there or not. They can also receive my report after the fact, but commonplace is that they come during the autopsy.
And do you describe the results as you find them, or do they ask you questions at the conclusion or some other procedure?
It's rare for the detective to ask me questions. It is more of as a physician, sharing my findings of what I saw was significant that caused the death.
So you're confident in saying you would not have said in 4 different locations of the body?
It would not be my expectation that my answer would have been that.
All right. Did you indicate or state during the course of the autopsy that there was 1 stab wound in the left chest, piercing the left ventricle chamber of the heart, which was a fatal wound?
I would say that statement would be an interpretation of what I said.
Is it an accurate statement?
It is accurate, except for the word fatal is not one that I use in my practice.
So if the word fatal is there, it did not come from you.
The wording that I use is not fatal, yes. From
Did you use a word meaning that the wound by itself could have been the cause of death by itself?
Yes.
So, okay. The term fatal wound, though, is not used by you, but it's an accurate statement, correct?
I would not describe it as accurate. That's how I understand people would understand it, but that's not what I would say is accurate.
Then you tell me, if you would please, what the distinction would be between a fatal wound and what you found concerning that wound to the right leg. The left, did I tell you left chest or right leg?
You're talking about ventricle.
I'm sorry.
You were talking about ventricle?
Yes, left chest. I'm sorry. What would you say?
The wording I would use is immediately life-threatening injury because I think it gets rid of any potential confusion.
Okay. Concerning the right leg, did you indicate that one stab wound was approximately 4.5 inches deep, severing the femoral artery?
Yes.
That is an accurate statement.
Yes.
And would you characterize that as a fatal wound, or would you characterize it as what you just indicated?
Objection. Unclear.
Vague? Is that your objection? Vague?
Yes.
It's overruled.
You understand the question?
Yes.
Can you answer it?
Yes.
Thank you.
I would describe that as an immediately life-threatening wound.
Just as you described the wound to the left chest, correct?
Correct.
Next, a wound to the right neck / face, 4 stab wounds right to left and downward. Let me stop there. Is that an accurate statement?
Overruled.
Each stab wound had its direction, and I believe the majority were in the direction stated.
Right to left and downward.
Yes.
But you're saying there may have been other wounds to the neck face area in addition to those 4?
The collectively describing them as all having the same features there are some directions that were consistent throughout for all of them, the 4, and the back to front was consistent and downward as well.
And all right, then we go on. 1 stab wound severed the carotid artery. Is that a correct statement?
The carotid artery, yes.
Carotid, I'm sorry. I should know that. I get the test every month. Carotid artery.
Correct.
And if it said fatal wound, you would use the language you've used with the other 2, immediately life-threatening. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
And finally, an injury to the left neck, 1 V-shaped stab wound. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes.
Did you, in the course of your autopsy, estimate the length of the blade used by the murderer?
No.
Did Detective Fillmore ask you what the approximate or exact length of the blade was, or minimal length? Let me ask you this. Did he ask you any questions about the length of the blade used by the suspect regarding the stab wound in the victim's right leg?
There were no discussions about the length of the weapon that was used.
Do you, as you sit here right now, or in your notes, have an answer to the question of what the minimal length of the blade would have been to cause the stab wound in the victim's right leg?
No.
And you cannot give that answer even now at this time, reviewing your notes or anything else?
Correct.
The right leg injury would have to have been caused by a weapon that was at least 4.5 inches long. Is that a correct statement?
No.
The wounds, and we're talking about all the wounds, were they consistent with a one-sided edged weapon without a serrated edge?
Yes.
Meaning that every wound that you observed, let's stick to the ones that were the possible cause of death. How many of those were there? Was there 4 of those, or you tell me?
There were 3 that were immediately life-threatening.
Okay. Would they have to have been caused, or were they caused by a one-sided edged weapon without a serrated edge?
I couldn't answer it in that way as asked.
Did you make the statement, or is it an accurate statement, I'll leave it at that, that the wounds were consistent with the one-sided edge weapon without a serrated edge?
It would be consistent with that, yes.
Does that mean it could also be inconsistent with a weapon without a serrated edge?
That would be incorrect.
In other words, what I'm saying is, in this case, those wounds, would they had to have been caused, the life-threatening wounds, with a one-sided edged weapon without a serrated edge?
That's one possibility.
What's the other possibility?
The other possibility was that there was a serrated edge.
So you're saying, as you sit here today, it could have been caused by any type of knife with or without a serrated edge?
I would further qualify with a single-edged knife with or without serration.
Would it have to have had a minimal length?
No.
Did you tell that to Detective Fillmore?
That discussion would be very unusual in my practice, so I don't believe that would have happened here.
Okay. The victim sustained a shallow scratch or non-fatal laceration to the left armpit area, approximately 10 inches in length, running vertically. Is that an accurate statement?
No.
Were you asked to describe was there a shallow scratch or non-fatal laceration to the left armpit area?
The description words for what it is what I cannot agree to.
What can't you agree to?
The description of a laceration as the term.
If I took that out and said victim sustained a shallow scratch to the left armpit area approximately 10 inches in length running vertically, would that be an accurate statement?
That would be an accurate interpretation of what I shared.
So the word you have problem with is non-fatal laceration, is that right?
Correct.
Were you able to ascertain the order of the stab wounds you observed in the victim?
No.
Were you able to determine if there was more than one weapon used?
No.
Were you able to determine whether Fabio Sementilli was alive prior to all the stab wounds?
Yes.
And that's based on what?
All the wounds that were examined showed bleeding. In order for bleeding to happen, your heart has to be beating, that you're alive, and therefore these injuries happened while he was alive.
Was there rapid bleeding that you observed in the course of the life-threatening wounds. Is that an act? Well, let me change that. Regarding the wound to the thigh, the wound to the jugular vein, the perforation of the right carotid artery, and the perforation of the left ventricle of the heart, would all those injuries be extremely severe and tend to bleed rather rapidly?
It's my expectation, because there are large vessels, including the heart, that the bleeding would be expected to be rapidly, although I don't observe the rate itself.
And was that your testimony that you gave at the grand jury, if you recall?
I don't recall what question was asked for that, and if that was my answer.
All right, let me give you the question and ask you if you answered yes. Given not just the thigh, the wound to the thigh that we talked about, but the perforation of the jugular vein, perforation of the right carotid artery, and the perforation of the left ventricle of the heart, again, would those all be injuries that would be extremely severe and tend to bleed rather rapidly? Do you remember that question?
I don't recall that specific question.
May I approach, Your Honor? Would you read, this is on page 47 of the grand jury, could you read just to yourself lines 20 to 26?
Yes.
Does that refresh your memory as to whether or not that question was asked of you at the grand jury?
Yes.
And was it asked, and was your answer yes?
Yes.
So would you expect death to have occurred in a very short period of time given those injuries?
The expected time frame would be minutes for the death to occur.
So minutes, not seconds?
Minutes, not seconds.
So, again, could you tell us what is your estimation of how long the victim lived from the first injury or first wound until he would have died?
It's on the order of minutes, given that the brain's response to blood loss had started.
Did you say previously about 10 minutes, or did I get that wrong?
That's incorrect.
Can you give an estimate of how many minutes based on these wounds to this alleged this victim?
No.
Would there be any way, other than if you were a doctor, for the murderers to know whether or not the victim, in this case Fabio Sementilli, was dead or not, and at what time that, well, he was dead, but at what time that occurred?
Objection. We call for speculation.
Sustained.
Also.
You were asked about defensive wounds, correct?
Yes.
Was there an approximate time when you would have not expected the victim to have been able to fight back in any way because of the severity of the wounds and the time that had elapsed in the bleeding?
I believe you're asking if he could have been incapacitated.
Yes, thank you.
There is, with the wounds that would have been bleeding, I don't have an expectation of when incapacitation would have occurred given these wounds.
But it would have to have been sometime within that 10-minute period, correct?
Sorry, Counsel, there was no 10-minute period.
I'm sorry. Do you have an estimated time of how long Fabio Sementilli lived from the moment of the first injury until he was dead?
The best estimate is in order of minutes.
But no more specific than minutes?
No more specific.
And it is your statement or testimony that there were no defensive wounds for whatever reason?
There were no wounds that would be classically described as defensive wounds observed.
Which means, in your layman's lingo, he was not. There's no evidence that he was able to fight back because of the severity of the wounds. Is that a fair statement?
It's not based on the severity of the wounds, but rather just looking at the body if there were any defensive wounds, which I did not see any.
Okay, so that's based on the assumption that if he were able to, he likely would have fought back or resisted in some way.
Sustained.
Well, you did give a statement that you would have expected, absent some occurrences like surprise or so forth, for there to be defensive wounds, correct?
Objection, states the evidence.
Oh.
There are scenarios that I shared earlier about someone who may not be able to have defensive wounds, yes.
Okay, and I'm not going to repeat that. You gave the reasons why, correct?
That's correct.
So, getting back to Detective Fillmore, you don't recall him asking any specific questions of you following the autopsy, is that correct?
No.
What is correct?
It's correct that I don't recall any specific questions at the end of the autopsy. Common practice is just a courteous thank you sort of discussion, but no further questions usually.
If there had been questions and answers by you, would you have made a notation of that in your notes?
No.
Do you know who Detective Fillmore is?
In what sense?
Have you ever come in contact with him before hearing his name today?
Yes.
And you know him how?
It's my recollection in my notes. I note who attended the autopsy, and I noted Detective Fillmore from LAPD. This was 8 years ago.
So your notes indicate, and your testimony would be that he did attend the autopsy, correct?
That's correct.
Did you have your note? Is everything you're testifying to today based on your notes as opposed to your actual memory and recollection?
This is based off of my efforts in the report to memorialize my findings, and so that is what I'm able to testify to.
Okay. So, as far as you remember, and according to your notes, once the autopsy was over, Detective Fillmore likely thanked you and left, correct?
That's correct.
And he never shared with you any of his notes or reports or anything that he had written down as during the course or after the autopsy?
Objection, asked and answered.
Sustained.
Did you have any contact with Detective Fillmore again after that date regarding this case?
No, I have no other recollection.
Did you discuss? Well, forgive me if I asked this before. You have or have not seen the item Exhibit 621 before today?
I had not seen that document that's in your hands, no.
It was not brought up to you at all by the prosecution team, either the attorneys or the investigating officers prior to your testimony today?
No.
Was Detective Fillmore's report or name, let me break it down, was his name mentioned to you at all during the course of your preparation for your testimony today?
No.
And were any of the findings that I have gone through with you in his report, or notations in his report, mentioned to you or discussed with you in any way with the prosecution or its team prior to your testimony today?
Objection, assumes facts not in evidence.
Sustained.
I read to you the contents of this report. You recall that?
Your Honor, I'm going to object again. No.
It's overruled. That's to that.
Objection rescinded.
Overruled. That's to that.
You can answer.
I recall portions of it being read to me. I don't know if the entirety was read to me.
And you're talking about right now in court.
That's correct.
Did any of that occur during the course of, or before you testified today? Any reference to this report at any time, or Dr. Phil, or Detective Fillmore's attendance at the autopsy?
Not prior to my testimony. It's my first time seeing that document.
And the first time the findings I read to you were discussed?
I'm going to object as to the term findings, Your Honor.
Sustained.
First time the contents of Detective Fillmore's report, which I've gone through with you line by line, your testimony today is the first time you become aware of that, correct?
Objection assumes facts not evidence.
Sustained.
Did anyone else discuss Exhibit 621 with you?
Objection asked and answered.
It's overruled.
That's the document that is in your hands there. No, this is the first I've seen it.
Thank you for your patience, and I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Just briefly. You don't work for the LAPD, do you?
I do not.
The medical examiner's department is an independent department. Is that correct?
That's correct, and that was part of the name change of our department to medical examiner to further assert that we have always been independent of law enforcement.
And if detectives choose to write notes, you have no knowledge what they put in their notes. Would that be fair to say?
Well, I'm going to object. That's called for speculation.
That's what she's saying. I will sustain as though.
Other than defense counsel showing you some piece of paper that you've never seen before, you, as you've said, you have no idea what the contents of any of the reports are in this case.
I do not.
And when you said that it's possible there is a serrated edge on one or more murder weapon, just as it's possible that there was not a serrated edge on one or more of the sharp objects. That's because, as we talked about on direct exam, there are no pattern marks or tool marks.
That's correct. There are some rare circumstances where a serrated blade can leave a particular mark, but that is absent in this case. And there were no injuries that would retain features that will point to any specific weapon.
I have nothing further.
And for Mr. Levine.
No, Your Honor.
Thank you, Doctor. Yours.